Wales was the setting for the first round of the Mobil 1 Top Gear British Rally Championship. The historic English town of Chester the starting point of the Vauxhall Sport Rally. At pre-event scrutineering, it was obvious that after his fantastic drives on the Lombard RAC and Swedish rallies, Colin McRae was clear favourite.
All the press have got me is winning the rally already, but I think we've forgotten that Gwyndaf Evans is a very quick man, and I'm sure he's going to be maybe even in front, if not very close behind, so I don't think it's going to be too easy.
Indeed, Gwyndaf Evans was on parade and looking forward to his home forests. But as the army of scrutineers got about their business of checking for legality and safety, there were signs that tensions were mounting for Trevor Smith.
Well wound up, really. I mean, into the British Championship. Really looking forward to it.
It was cold, windy, and there were signs of rain as the cars left Chester Racecourse. Not far behind Colin McRae was his younger brother Alistair, a leading contender in the Group N showroom category.
Group N is going to be the sort of attraction in the British Championship this year, and there's a number of young up and coming rally drivers that are all going to be trying to take that top prize, so it should be good.
Former ladies world champion Louise Aitken-Walker was also in Group N for the first time.
The competition's going to be very good, and there's a lot of young drivers. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing how they all go, and I wish them all the best.
Among those, Richard Burns in a Subaru. But for Louise, this would be a day of learning, for Group N cars are a lot different to the more powerful Group A variety. But the drivers of these cars on this rally are as good as any in the business, according to Mika Solberg.
Finnish people would be surprised if we would take the top 5 in Group N here. Burns, McRae, Head, Lewis, me, and then go to Finland. I don't think that any of us should have any fear of going well in Finland.
An hour away from Chester, 10 of the best stages in Wales awaited competitors. The route included the Dyfi Forests in mid-Wales and, for openers, 2 of the fastest stages in Clochainog Forest. From early morning, the crowds gathered in anticipation of a breathtaking display by car number 1, last year's British champion Colin McRae. Steve Lee takes up the story.
23-year-old McRae set off as he meant to continue the ever-developing Subaru legacy, charging over the flowing 11.5-mile stage in just over 11 minutes. Trevor Smith, driving this Group A Sierra Cosworth, won the Mintex National Championship in Britain last year after 6 years of trying. Kenny McKinstry from Ulster won last year's Irish Championship, driving on all tarmac rallies, but showed that in his Subaru legacy he can scatter the stones with the best of them. Gwyndaf Evans, the now famous school bus driver from Dinas Mouthwy in mid-Wales, was a last-minute entry in this hired Sierra Cosworth. Before the rally, he drove it for literally 10 minutes just before the start. Evans had been testing works cars for the Ford team all week, but this one sounded slightly off-song. He'd obviously got problems. Brian Bell from Skegness in Lincolnshire, another of the Group A contenders, has been rallying for more years than he cares to remember, 28 in fact. He's one of the true amateur enthusiasts in this championship, just like Trevor Smith, who gave his views on the first stage to Tony Mason.
Very, very slippery. I mean, the first 200 yards it was all logs and muddy and we nearly went off, which is a bit unnervous for the rest of the stage, unfortunately. Very slippery in there.
What was your time there?
11:53. What did Colin do?
11:03.
Oh dear. Back to school.
Works driver Malcolm Wilson was on hand to watch over his teammate.
What are you doing, Malcolm? Giving him advice?
Well, no, we're just looking after the car, so it's obviously it's nerve-wracking standing here as being in the driver's seat.
What was it like, Gwyndaf?
The car is a really nice car, but it doesn't quite seem to have the same power as what I'm used to. But all the same, we're here and we're enjoying ourselves.
The Group N battle is expected to be one of the highlights of the series. Louise Aitken-Walker heading several star performers. Another Scot, Robbie Head, still only 23, but considered something of a veteran among the many young drivers competing in this championship. Richard Burns, from the unlikely rallying territory of Reading, won the Peugeot Championship. Obviously, he was having problems handling the Group N Subaru.
The car's fine, yeah, doesn't seem to be any problems. It's just me trying to sort out where the surface is bad.
Is it a long way to go?
Yeah, definitely.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Finland's Mika Solberg in his Group N Mitsubishi Galant was taking it gently. He reckoned he'd selected the wrong tyres for the first stages. The latest member of the rallying McRae clan, Alistair, was giving the Group N Sierra Cosworth its first outing in the championship.
Bala Lake and the first main chance for service crews to get their hands on the cars. Robbie Head was in 4th place. How had he found it?
It was a little bit slippy in there. The surface is very muddy and there's like a film of mud and it's very, very slidey, and the tyres weren't biting in as well as I think they should have been, but other than that, not too bad. A little misfire that I think we're going to cure in this service area, and other than that, it's not been too bad.
Up at the head of the field, Colin McRae and Gwyndaf Evans were pulling away from the rest of the cars. Had they a battle on their hands?
Colin's in a battle of his own, I think, to be fair. Colin's going very well. And we're sticking in there, hopefully keeping to 2nd place, and we'll be quite content with that today, and enjoying every minute of it.
So on that very first stage where you were 20 seconds fast, I mean, how fast were you driving?
Driving fairly quickly because you can't afford to back off because you just don't know how quick these guys are going behind. So I'm driving, kind of safe flat out speed.
100.
Safe speed for Colin would be mega fast for most, of course.
See you then. 250.
Brian Bell appeared to be struggling to keep in the top 10 in his Group A Cosworth. Why was that?
Well, we're doing our best, but we're having a few minor problems on the way, as it happens. We had an alter pack up on the last stage, so the boys are working frantically now to try and correct that. We've changed the battery. On the way to the last stage, the car just stopped. So, it's now, what is the problem now? Had a small off on stage 1, cost us a few seconds. But other than that, we're going fine. Oh, and the intercom's not working. How about just for good measure?
and I'm calling left-hand bends right and right left.
I was just saying, I like your service crew.
Yes, very nice, isn't it?
A more conventional service crew were attending to Alistair McRae's car. Was a Group N battle looming?
I think there's going to be a very good little battle, yes. Maybe a big battle, I don't know.
Talking of battles, there was strong competition in the new Lombard Junior Challenge. What was the pressure like there?
Intense, very, I think. From what I've only just seen a couple of times, but they're all running up to each other, asking what everyone's doing, so it's really tight, it's good.
And this is Higgins in action in his Works Vauxhall Nova.
Over the bridge. Down on the straight. Slightly right. 45 left at 90 left. 90 left here.
As the rally moved south to stage 4 at Drusinant, it was obvious that the prize of £10,000 and a free entry in the Lombard RAC was making this junior challenge one of the high spots of the rally. 25-year-old Richard Forster from Yorkshire was very impressive and climbing up the field fast, though not quite able to get on terms with the 2 leaders in the junior section. Mark Higgins, who was able to pass his driving test age 16 as he lives in the Isle of Man, was well on song thanks to enthusiastic assistance from co-driver Cliff Simmons.
Very quick, just slightly left. Keeps on going, it's very quick, slightly left. Go on.
Johnny Milner began driving at the tender age of 5 on a tractor on the family pig farm in Yorkshire. In his work-supported Peugeot, he was neck and neck with Higgins, both with identical penalties at this point. The contest in Group N was also electrifying, as Robbie Head Sierra was within 2 seconds of Richard Burns' Subaru after stage 3 at Aberhernant. Dom Buckley Jr. from the Scottish borders won the very first rally he entered. He wouldn't win this one though, as he was having fuel, electrical and turbo problems. Another man with problems, Graham Middleton. He was driving a brand new Toyota Celica GT4. Preparation of the car was only completed the night before the rally and it was suffering severe overheating problems. Richard Burns had pushed his Group N car up into 3rd place overall by stage 3. But on the following one, he didn't seem to be going with the same verve. Louise Aitken-Walker, driving the new green Cosworth, complete with catalytic converter, made no secret of the difficulty she was having altering her driving style to Group N after the power of last year's Group A Sierra.
Gwyndaf Evans was also finding his Sierra well down on the power of works cars.
7 right. And 8 right.
His and co-driver Howard Davis's intimate knowledge of the Welsh forest was helping them to keep in second place. Meanwhile, at the head of the field, Colin McRae and Derek Ringer were making it look all so easy. Although they had a healthy lead of 50 seconds over Evans, a puncture could easily alter that, so they daren't let up, as we can see from our own onboard camera.
4 right to junction, turn 2 left, or 2 left minus. 150. 3 left to 3 right.
Kelly McKinstry's Subaru, complete with damaged windscreen after a brush with the trees, obediently followed the rules of the road with ordinary traffic en route to Dolgethley. Colin McRae is already ensconced in the Subaru motorhome at the service area. It's a time for crews to relax as the cars are cosseted by the mechanics.
One of the things that's occurred to me, you're actually having to change gear using your clutch now, which is fairly new to you, isn't it?
It's very new. I think the last time I used a clutch to change down in a gear was maybe 3-4 years ago. And really when you drive with your left foot brake and your accelerator, and you tend not to think about the gears, but with this one you must use the clutch, so obviously you can't left foot brake as easy. It doesn't come natural to me at this point in time.
Louise's Group N Cosworth has a synchromesh gearbox, so any attempts at clutchless gear changes could bring on major problems for the lady from Scotland and her Swedish co-driver Tina Torner. In the walls in a minor sort of way was another Scot, young Alistair McRae, whose mechanics had to do a bit of glazing work.
Well, on the second last stage, just a right-hander maybe half a mile in, there's a big branch sticking out the banking. Kenny McKinstry hit it and then we did the same, so it's burst the screen and bent the pillar slightly. It's not a problem. We lost, Dave couldn't see out for the rest of the stage, so he couldn't read the map at all in the rest of that stage, but it's not a problem.
But someone who had more serious problems was Richard Burns.
Just on the start line of the last stage, we've had something in the transmission brake and we've lost nearly 3/4 of a minute to the Group N leader. We were just in front going into that stage and now we've dropped quite a way back. We're third now.
So what are they doing here?
They're actually changing the gearbox and the front transmission to see if they can find the problem.
The Dolgethley Farmers Mart service area was a hive of activity, and the Peugeot 205 of Barry Richardson and Steve Evans was being given much attention under the eagle eyes of the law.
Steve and I are both traffic patrol officers who work for the Metropolitan Police Traffic Division, and our usual beat is the M25, the M3 and the M4, so this certainly makes a change from the largest car park in the world.
Still going up, round to the right, tightening.
Whether this driving style is in the police driving manual is a moot point, but Barry and Steve were making good progress until shortly after Dolgethley, when they went off the road, got back on, ran out of petrol and retired.
Still climbing up, over the crest is safe. Down around, you see where you're going.
Lunch in the motorhome over, Colin McRae went to check that all was in order with the rally car, as Gwyndaf Evans and Malcolm Wilson had their nourishment and observed the mechanics at work at the same time. For lesser mortals, further down the field, it was a different story. A picnic and a flask of coffee provided by mum and little sister to Julian Porter in car 51. For the youngest driver on the rally, it was very much a family affair.
And now you've got the dreaded Dovey to look forward to. What about that?
Well, I don't think I've been in there yet, so we'll just wait and see.
Got a fearsome reputation, you know.
Is that where McRae went off last year or something? Well, we'll try not to do that.
Heading south of the infamous Dovey Forest, Colin McRae continued on his remarkable way. So far he'd clocked up fastest time on every special stage of the event. Not content with competing on all rounds of the Mobil 1 Top Gear Championship, he's also contesting a number of world rallies for Subaru this year. In the Dovey complex, Gwyndaf Evans was now virtually in his own back garden. Still holding second place, his badly misfiring Sierra was now over a minute behind the flying Subaru. As he'd no spare screen, the Subaru of Kenny McKinstry was still sporting the battle scars from his earlier brush with the trees. Although he had difficulty seeing, McKinstry still overtook Head, who, like many, had punctured a tyre. This cost Head at least 80 seconds, and he plummeted down the field from a magnificent third place. This allowed his fellow Lanark driver Alistair McRae to make a real charge, and he moved up to third. Young Julian Porter had been driving very sensibly, but he was about to experience something familiar to every rallyman worth his salt.
Turn the rest off.
There was another contest developing in Group N between Ford's Green Lady, Louise Aitken-Walker, just 10 seconds ahead of the London-based Finn, Mika Solberg, in his Mitsubishi Galant. Alistair McRae now had a handsome lead in the group, and luck was going his way, unlike Don Buckley, whose tale of woe was continuing when he lost 3 minutes with a puncture. Further down the field, they were not escaping the problems either, with damaged gearboxes and punctures the order of the day. The Calvin brothers from Ulster demonstrating the latest line in air conditioning. Michael Keng and Tony Graham come from the flatlands of Lincolnshire, but look remarkably at home in the Welsh mountains, as we can see.
Right 3, into left 1, 200, left 7.
An unusual car in British rallying, the 16-valve Group N Renault Clio of Nigel Shield. If ever there was a textbook rally for Colin McRae, this was it. He continued to charge ahead. The Lombard Junior challengers were still at it hammer and tongues, although Mark Higgins had lost his lead in this section when his Nova's gearbox stuck in first gear. Here we see just why this youngster has been given a works drive by Vauxhall.
All the time. All the way round, and again. Twisting through the logs, 60 right and left.
Richard Forster's drive was also impressive. From the lowly starting number of 33, he'd got up to 15th overall. And that was 1 place and 1 minute behind former Rallycross champion Johnny Milner in the Peugeot.
The rain, which had threatened all day, finally came. After a slow start, Trevor Smith was now in the groove. For the popular Welshman, Gwyndaf Evans, it was a case of determination and perseverance. The Sierra was still missing like mad. It was becoming a frustrating day, though Dovey had been kinder to him than many times in the past.
Tight 6 right and 7 left. 7 left.
Conditions became worse by the minute as the car charged around the huge forest complex. Son of 5 times British champion Jimmy McRae, Colin was showing that he could easily emulate his famous father. He was in his element, swinging in the rain. With younger brother Alistair not far behind, it makes you really wonder what Mrs. McRae puts in their porridge each morning.
The famous service area at Dolgethley was indeed a welcome sight for many as the rally returned there after the gruelling Dovey stages.
Hello, what's happened to you?
We've broken down in the middle of the stage 6, I think it is, 5 or 6, with the transmission failed.
So, I mean, you were doing work here just before that?
That's right, we changed the gearbox here, we thought that was the problem, but something broke again in the stage. So that's where the car was stranded.
Hello, what's this? Despite his phenomenal speed, Colin had left the ProDrive Subaru unscathed until now.
We got a puncture on a hairpin, and the car slid and hit the rut and pulled the tyre off the rim. I'm not sure whether we clipped the bank or it was just the tyre coming off the rim that's damaged the car, because it didn't feel as if we hit anything very hard.
Louise Aitken-Walker's Cosworth was running well, but the ladies were having problems.
With the Group A you could use the handbrake, and here you have to swing it and be really tough, and then it's really narrow, so yeah, we had to reverse a couple of times.
There's no doubt that driving a Group N requires, as the type of braking system makes it impossible to do handbrake turns, one of Louise's specialities.
As the rally returned northwards, the worst of the weather was left behind. It was time to return to Clochainog. Mark Higgins also comes from a rallying family. His grandparents and parents used to compete, and his mother actually navigated for Mark on his early events. He was still trying everything he knew to get back the time lost earlier, extracting every ounce of power from his 1600cc Nova.
Slightly right. Long, open hairpin left.
Without doubt, the Junior Championship will be one of the features of the series, with Forster chasing the two early favourites, Milner here in fine form, and Higgins, who'd not had the best of rallies.
We've just got a puncher then, and the gearbox went about 2 stages ago, so we had to trip out with only first gear, and it was a real quick stretch, so we lost about a minute and a half and lost the class lead, but we're still in third place and cracking on, enjoying it.
And the battle for the juniors was pretty hot at one point, wasn't it?
Definitely hot, yeah.
And certainly, the battle between Mark and his main adversary, Johnny Milner, will be renewed many times again in the future.
So, your rival in front, he's had problems. Have you been trouble-free?
We've been trouble-free, really. It's getting very rutted through the last few stages, and we've got away with quite a few nasty little bumps, thinking we're going to knock a tyre off the rim, but luckily we've managed to get away with it.
So not far to go now?
Well, I think another 5 miles, and hopefully, touch wood.
You think you've won the junior section?
I hope so.
Despite his many problems, the redoubtable Don Buckley was still pushing hard, maybe too hard. Back in Group N, as Head tackled the Clochainog stages for the second time, the pace was getting faster. Head was taking time off Alistair McRae and reckoned he could catch him. McRae was having none of this and drove the fastest he'd ever driven over the last 2 stages, even changing a noisy gearbox as a precaution. He would manage to fend off Head by just 1 second. Jeff Williams and Stuart Foley had a steady drive throughout the rally, but with 2 stages to go, this deceptive left-hander caught them out. Gwyndaff's day of frustration was nearly over. His mechanics had replaced virtually every part of the electrics, but all to no avail.
Trevor Smith managed to overhaul the spluttering Gwyndaff on the very last stage. It started slowly, but rapidly improved. The display given by Colin McRae on the Vauxhall Sport Rally was one that could be expected from a much older man. Many fans talk about Colin McRae as a world champion in the making. They could be right. So, as many predicted, a convincing win for Colin McRae, who was never really challenged. But good placings for tarmac specialist Kenny McKinstry and Louise Aitken-Walker, just holding off Solberg. In the Group N section, as tight a contest as you'll ever see, with Robbie Head's superb charge back after punctures failing by just 1 second and giving the win to Alistair McRae. In the Lombard Junior Challenge, stirring drives from the top 3, with Johnny Milner taking honours on this occasion. So, Colin McRae and his co-driver Derek Ringer had done it again. They'd performed faultlessly throughout the rally and look as though they're on the road to retaining their British Championship crowns.
What a margin, 5 minutes. You've made it look very easy, was it?
Well, you can always say it's easy once you're here and you've won the rally, but you know, it's a bit more difficult than it looks.
You had a more or less trouble-free run though, didn't you?
Yeah, trouble-free. We'd 1 puncture for 8 miles, which dropped us a bit of time, but Gwyndaff had problems in that stage as well, so we were actually quicker than him, so yeah, it was a bit of luck there.
Now, Colin and the rest of the circus look forward to the next round of the Mobil 1 Top Gear Championship in Cumbria. Here's the best of the in-car action from the Vauxhall Sport, and there's a chance to see more after each round.
Hairpin left. 3 left plus 2, 3 right minus. 400. 3 right minus or 2 right plus.
left and 8 right. 8 left. 1 left and 8 right. Into tight 9 left and tight 9 right. Tight 9 left and tight 9 right. Tightens up and 8 left. 8 left. 6 right to 4 left and 6 right to junction square right. 6 right, 6 left and junction square right. Opens out. Flat right, long flat left. 150 to long 8 left junction. 150 to 100, long 8 left junction. Keep in, keep in. Flat to finish. Flat over the crest. Okay.
Shit, isn't it? Huh?
Yeah.
All the way up is okay. Right and left, watch him. That's good. It's long 60 right. Goes right and 90 left. Over a crest. Excellent. Slightly right. 60 left. Same back to the right. And again, same back to the right. It's quick all the way up. Slightly left. That's a little bit tighter, Mark. Good.
What's this?
Long 45 right, bit more, little bit more. Nice and tight, that's it. It's all quick, slightly right. Same again to the left. Good. Bloody hell. Slightly left. Tightens on the way in. That's him. Fast right. Fast right. Same to the left, is quite open. Good. 45 left and hairpin right. Very steep uphill. Very quick up the hill. Long straight. All the way up flat.
To junction, turn 2 left. Sorry, 2 right. Four kicks. Approach 300 to junction. Turn 2 left. Okay, good.
5, 4, 3,
Round 2 of the Mobil 1 Top Gear British Rally Championship and one of the most famous rally venues in the world. Kielder Forest on the English-Scottish border is the largest man-made forest in Europe. It may look idyllic, but for rally drivers it can be hell on earth. Rocky tracks, blind brows and ice were all on the menu for the Pirelli International Rally. The spectators love every bit of it, even if some of the drivers don't.
There's about 40 rally cars that went in there over the last 12 months that I don't think have ever come out, so I hope those are rumours only.
From what I can gather, you can get lost in there, so hopefully we won't do that.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Why?
Because everybody else goes off in there.
Star performer on this rally was Colin McRae in his Subaru, fresh from his shattering performance on the first round of the championship, the Vauxhall Sport. On that occasion, he had Gwyndaf Evans to contend with, and Colin had been given a run for his money. But Gwyndaf's Sierra Cosworth was off song all day, and in the end, he finished third just behind Trevor Smith. Gwyndaf hadn't managed to secure a drive on the Pirelli, so last year's British champion seemed fairly confident.
I don't really know why it's got a bad reputation, because it's not really any different to any other forest. I think just because they're long stages and a lot of the times on RAC it's in the dark and it's just, it's a bit easier to get caught out. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to it.
On maximum points after the first round, Colin McRae looked comfortable at the top of the table. But Trevor Smith was well placed to increase his score. He knows Kielder well and could prove to be McRae's major adversary on this rally. Then of course, there's always younger brother Alistair to think about.
It was on the Vauxhall Sport that the Group N battle emerged. Robbie Head here drove well all day, but after punctures was pipped at the post by another man in red, 21-year-old Alistair McRae. Other Group N contenders included Louise Aitken-Walker in her Sierra Cosworth and Richard Burns and Don Buckley, both of whom hoped they'd fare better than they did in Wales. Dougie Watson-Clark was on home territory and showing the scrutineer the many intricacies of his Sierra's boot. The Carlisle driver always goes well on home ground.
Should be good depending on what the snow's doing, shouldn't it?
In the Lombard Junior Championship, there would inevitably be hot competition between the two main protagonists, Milner and Higgins, the latter having the luxury of a full works Nova for his efforts.
It's going to be interesting tomorrow, I think.
It's a difficult one, isn't it, because there's only 4 stages and they're all long.
Nobody's going to know what anybody's doing until he's sort of into it, and that's it.
Well, you'll know a bit what I'm doing because I'm
keep an eye on you for a change. Yeah. And you've got that nice camera in as well this time, haven't you?
10,000 miles from home, Jim Gleeson was pleased to meet a fellow Aussie, though this one lives in Lichfield, England. Ola Stromberg from Sweden is an ice racing champion, so he must be happy about a wintry Kielder Forest.
I'm a little bit afraid
about the weather. I don't like the snow. You don't have any snowbanks.
You should like the snow coming from Sweden.
Yes, that's true, but we nearly don't have any snow there. I don't know what's happened.
From somewhat further afield came Atsumi Yoshida. His co-driver Dave Cabina had only met him 2 days before when he arrived at Heathrow. At scrutineering, the Tokyo gynecologist was looking somewhat puzzled. Maybe there were communication problems, or maybe he was just wondering what Kielder had in store for him.
This round of the championship was based in Carlisle. It was different as there were just 4 special stages making up the entire rally, totalling 75 stage miles. This will be an event where punctures and the lack of service would surely cause problems.
Right, good luck. Car number 5, Robbie Head, Cabo Roy.
In fact, this was almost the last we saw of these two Scotsmen. From the very first stage, their car slid off the road into a ditch and out of the event.
There were no problems for Colin McRae. He set off as he meant to continue, though the uncertainty of ice on the bends gave him something to think about. Irish tarmac specialist Kenny McKinstry was learning fast, despite never having been here before. But it was Alistair McRae who really set the cat among the pigeons on the first stage. He made second fastest time to Big Brother.
After his disappointment when he retired on the Vauxhall Sport, Richard Burns was in the wars again. His Subaru drowned out in a water splash. It spluttered its way to the finish, losing 4 minutes and any chance in the Group N section. Mika Solberg was lucky not to lose time when Burns got under his feet. Driving with typical Scandinavian style, Solberg, the 23-year-old Finn, has settled in London so he can compete in the British Championship. After years of two-wheel drive rallying, Paul Dias is now really enjoying the luxury of four-wheel drive. He also claims to really like Kielder. Although more or less on home territory, Don Buckley Jr. was far from happy. His day will be dogged by punches, not to mention severe stomach pains collected on a recent trip to the tropics.
At Long Edge on the Shepherd's Shield stage, Mark Higgins was in full flight. He was using every ounce of the 1600cc Nova's power and proving that the young star was worthy of his works drive. But Johnny Milner, his main challenger, was determined to keep on all the pressure in his Peugeot.
Crest, water.
Unfortunately for him, luck was not with him, and the plague of Kielder punctures would prove his undoing on this rally, leaving Higgins to show his tail. Australian Jim Gleeson, in his borrowed Astra, thought he was driving into a billabong. After his 10,000-mile flight from Sydney, he was in for an early retirement with a drowned engine. Now it was the first flight home after just 5 stage miles, while Peter Stevenson showed him how it should be done. Ola Stromberg had hardly had a chance to demonstrate his expertise on the snow, for his Saab Turbo was making heavy weather of it, and after just 12 miles of rallying, he was out with a broken gearbox.
Stromberg, like many others, might have thought a large tractor would be a better bet for the horrors of Britain's best-known forest complex. Colin McRae, however, didn't seem to be troubled by anything and said the first stage was just what he expected and no problem. Back on the road section, there was still the occasional hazard. Richard Forster, another junior challenger, was soon to retire, a victim of Kielder's slippery bends. Although Colin McRae and Derek Ringer had a 39-second lead at the end of the first stage, they were still piling on the pressure and demonstrating just how unpredictable these tracks are. McRae, as our in-car camera shows, was in fact extremely lucky to find such a harmless location for his one and only excursion of the rally. It just goes to show that even the mighty can fall. Trevor Smith, unusually, was having problems in his Cosworth and had lost his turbo boost. He trundled on for 15 miles in this mode, allowing the Irishman McKinstry to show that he was rapidly getting to grips with the forests of northern England. Young Alistair McRae was still making everyone wonder just how much slower Group N cars are. He was pressing on as though there was no tomorrow, but lost his second place with, you've guessed it, a puncture. Veteran campaigner Brian Bell was in fine form in his Cosworth, but there would be problems before the day was out.
There's always a local boy made good. Dougie Watson-Clark was doing just what was expected by his fans and up into fourth. With hardly any forestry tracks on his native Isle of Man, you wonder how young Mark Higgins learnt his trade. Our helicopter shot shows the rapid change of surface that contributed to Colin McRae's earlier little problem on this bend.
From Tokyo was getting well into the groove by now, although things look pretty hectic on board the Team Gyneco Mitsubishi Galant.
Oh, a bit tighter. Well, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Doing it enough of it to really start lifting. So please, pass.
Incidentally, what is Japanese for give us a shove?
Please, one man. Light.
The one and only major service point was on a peninsula by Kielder Water, and needless to say, it was all action.
Colin's not going quick enough, I don't think.
He's just giving me some advice.
What's that?
To go faster. He's just behind me.
Really? Well, we were lying second overall after the first stage, but we've had a rear puncture there about 5 miles from the end, so I don't know what time we've lost.
Trevor Smith's mechanics were trying to fix his turbo boost.
I had 2 punches on the first stage and boost pressure went for 15 miles on the second stage, so apart from that, it's been fine.
So where does that put you then?
I really haven't got a clue, but it can't be too good. But having said that, there's lots of punches around. I think we've lost about a minute and a half, something like that, in total.
There were mechanical problems also for Louise.
We had a bit of a problem there. We had a drive shaft go and a front wheel puncture. If it was the rear wheel puncture, maybe a front drive shaft, it would have been slightly easier to drive out, but being the opposite way around, having a front wheel puncture is about impossible to drive.
Troubles too for Richard Burns.
We had a few on the first stage, yeah, we had a puncture and then the car drowned out in the Ford unfortunately, so we dropped about 4.5 minutes, something like that. But on the last stage we had a fairly steady run through.
That was surprising, wasn't it? I mean, they're pretty well waterproofed usually, rally cars.
Yeah, they are. It's something that we hadn't sort of taken into account, if you like.
So where does that put you?
I really don't know, because we, as I say, we dropped sort of 4 minutes, so we'll carry on now and just try and get to the finish to get some championship points.
Johnny Milner in the Peugeot was trying to make up lost time.
Arrowed hairpin left. Round this left into a hairpin left. Still twisty. Medium right and a square left.
But he was coping well with Kielder's tricky tracks.
Especially now we've got a bit of snow here, the main thing is you've got to be right in the middle of the road and watch the conditions all the way through the stage. Compared to Yorkshire or something, you can afford to slide wide because there's no real ditches there. You can just go off a little bit and back on and not lose any time.
So Yorkshire wouldn't be your favourite forest by any chance, would they?
Well, it might have something to do with me living there.
As well as having 4 long stages, the other unique thing about the Pirelli International in Cumbria is that they're very close together. There's little opportunity to get a breather on the road sections between the stages. Halfway point, as the cars prepared for the infamous Kershope sections, all 22.5 miles of it, Colin McRae had built up a lead of 1 minute 42 seconds over Kenny McKinstry and younger brother Alistair, half a minute behind that.
Kenny McKinstry and co-driver Robbie Philpott were in their element, although they said the flat-out 6th gear crests took more than a little getting used to. Trevor Smith was still having problems, and his turbo was not performing as the makers intended. Struggling on against the odds, he had to suffer the indignity of Group N youngster Alistair McRae overtaking him in his efforts to catch McKinstry. Louise Aitken-Walker, the fast lady from Scotland, had overcome her earlier problems and seemed to perk up as the route headed north for her home ground. She and Tina Torner were holding 5th place. From much further north, Inverness in fact, Raymond Munro was ahead of Louise in his Group A Sierra, but suffered a broken brake pipe.
Richard Burns is one of the brightest young stars in British rallying, but he knew that this wasn't going to be his day. After his earlier adventures in the water, he was to suffer a puncture here, letting Brian Bell get onto his heels. Dougie Watson-Clark had continued to impress, but his Sierra was soon to succumb to the horrors of Kielder, which he knows so well, but can still catch you out.
Hello, what happened?
Hey.
What happened?
There's a very fast downhill straight, and it's sort of 4th and 5th gear, and we just hit a depression and broke the strut, and the wheel came off and everything like that, you know, so.
All over?
All over, I'm afraid, yeah.
Give it to him.
Johnny Milner and Chris Wood, despite their earlier punctures, were giving it everything they'd got, but couldn't quite get on terms with the flying Mark Higgins this time out.
Right, a slight right and a hairpin left. Arrowed. Hairpin left.
Higgins had the assistance of Vauxhall Works driver Dave Metcalf on this rally in an advisory capacity. If I'm not careful, he'll soon start beating me, he said.
Yoshi was enjoying every minute of it and said he wished they had forests like ours in Japan. There were a few problems on board with communications between driver and co-driver, as neither spoke much of each other's language. It had a few hairy moments, but it was nice to know help was on hand if he or his Jersey-based Mitsubishi Galant needed it. Paul Dias, the Australian who hasn't been back home for 20 years, is one of the few drivers who actually look forward to Kielder. It was a bit like the Australia he remembered from his youth. You could go for miles without seeing a living person.
It's killer Kielder again. It's rough, there's snow, it's slippy, it's dry, it's good rallying though.
Just what you expected?
Yeah, a bit more snow we expected, but where there is a bit of snow, it's very, very slippy.
Andrew Hudson and Jim Stairs, despite 2 punctures, were up into the top 10 and on their way to a class win. Jeff Stewart's Nova picked the right place to go off. If you must leave the road, always do it when there are spectators present. So off they went, shaken but not stirred. Skodas have a reputation for winning classes on rallies, and Steve Wedgbury was well on his way to doing so again. One stage to go, and it was time for a little breather in the borders village of Newcastleton. Are you happy with your times, Mika?
Well, I can't be with stage 3. We had very big problems on stage 3.
What was that?
10 miles before the finish, we lost our brakes, all the brakes. I just had the handbrake, and as a result of that I hit the rock, and we had a front puncture and then a rear puncture, and then a rear disc went, so we lost altogether. Then, because I had no brakes, we went out once for half a minute, so altogether we lost about 5 minutes.
Among Brian Bell's problems had been numerous punctures. No wonder this event is sponsored by a tyre company.
The electrical fan on the radiator packed up, which didn't help things. The car was getting pretty hot. It was reaching temperatures of 110.
And I suspect you were reaching temperatures pretty high as well, were you?
I was about 300, I think.
We need to go now.
We need to go now.
How's it going then?
It's going not as well as you're going.
Well, it's so rough out there in places. Are you finding the bumpy bits the awkward, yeah?
I'm just driving this absolutely flat out trying to keep up. I mean, I believe you've got a, well, I wouldn't say a better car, but you're just driving a lot better than I am today.
Well, the thing is, it's just the bumps where I'm not used to holding it on, and the car takes the bumps where you're probably having trouble with it, so
to be honest, it's never really got out of shape. It's just under braking a few times, the back end's got stepped out, but it's good fun.
Oh, well, it's nice to see somebody smiling anyway.
We always got to try and smile there. We just thought we'd have an old steady run today, because we thought we'd survive Kielder and attack on the Welsh.
So it's going according to plan, is it?
Yeah, pretty near. We only lost about 30 seconds with about half a Kielder stuck in the back calipers on the last stage, but other than that, we had no problems.
Do you enjoy these stages?
You survive these stages.
Natsumi Yoshida was given a little VIP treatment, with Lombard RAC rally organiser Malcolm Neal clocking him in at Newcastleton.
It's only one to go, but it's 23 miles, so a wee bit apprehensive. We'll see what happens.
You're having a good run though, aren't you?
No, it's been going very well, yeah. Dropped a bit of time with a puncture, but apart from that, we've had no problems. Touch wood.
Although many people might say that Colin McRae, his Subaru and their massive support had little opposition on the Pirelli International Rally, there's no doubt that the young Scots driver has been impressive. He claimed to have been driving at 7/10, well off his pace on World Championship events, but this is in itself an achievement. It's often much harder to drive slowly than quickly, as concentration can easily be lost. And talking of McRae's, the drive by younger brother Alistair was equally impressive. With third place ahead of him, he's certainly demonstrating that he was a worthy winner of the 1992 Shell Scholarship. Kenny McKinstry can't keep saying he's a novice in the forest. His speed has improved phenomenally.
Mark Higgins kept up the pressure right through, finishing a remarkable 8th overall. Louise Aitken-Walker and Tina Turner continued in their role as leading ladies and showed they were trying to the bitter end, en route to a fine 5th place. Johnny Milner's rally had been less than perfect, and despite flapping bonnet on his last stage, he managed to hold his lead in the Junior Championship, although he admitted to not being able to match Higgins' speed this time round.
Raymond Munro and Neil Ewing managed one of their best drives yet and were rewarded with a 4th place. Yoshi was still at it hammer and tongue and gaining in confidence by every mile, but there were still 15 miles left.
Oh dear. Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, it's all right.
Okay?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We're in here.
That's rallying and that's Kielder. Some watch it, some make it, and some just come limping home. It's all in a day's work. All that was left now was a wash and brush up before the final run to Carlisle, in time for co-drivers to compare notes.
It's not. The car worked fine, yeah. We just had the puncture and the drive shaft.
Why did you drive off the road? That's not fun.
Oh, I tell you, we came over this crest. How does it look, Tina? And
it looks.
How does it look? By this time we're already
Too
off
late.
the road. So then we took the dirt back, and then should we try and go up? Yeah.
Your team manager really wants to know these things.
Oh, it's best for him to know. We don't have any secrets for him, I tell you.
Then that's when the car's broken. Then I know why.
Also a happy second place man, Kenny McKinstry.
Long stages are fine. I mean, people talk about a 23-mile stage being a problem, but you actually get quite into it, so you do, once you get a long stage. And I just enjoy that, for sure.
For Colin McRae and Derek Ringer, another convincing win, confirming their dominance in the championship as a whole. Kenny McKinstry's and Alistair McRae's performances on this rally have put them second equal in the championship with Trevor Smith. In Group N, no holding Alistair McRae for the second event running, with Louise Aitken-Walker next, then Paul Dias. And in the Lombard Junior section, this round to Mark Higgins with a convincing win over friend and rival Johnny Milner.
For the afternoon. And now's the time to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, would you please put your hands together and welcome the overall winners of the Pirelli International Rally 1992, Colin McRae and Derek Ringer in the Subaru Legacy.
So how was that then today?
Very good, no problems at all, just a gentle cruise round.
A gentle cruise, really? How fast were you going?
We were altering our pace, you know, some obviously in the snowy bits we were backing right off, and on the clearer bits we were going a bit quicker, so whereas if there'd been a bit more competition behind us, we would have had to take more chances in the snow, but you know, there was no point today.
The second round of the championship then, just like the first one, to Colin. As if one triumphant son wasn't enough for 5 times British champion Jimmy McRae and his wife Margaret on camera, son number 2 was in third place. How long before Alistair manages to beat Colin? circus moved to Scotland for the third Top Gear British Rally Championship. Unlike the previous two rallies in the series, the Scottish International was a three-day affair and centred on the fair city of Perth.
Extra interest was created by Malcolm Wilson in Ford's newest weapon, the four-wheel drive Escort Cosworth. Wilson would run 10 minutes ahead of the rally. As the car's not yet been approved for international competition, why had Ford come to Perth?
We're here to learn about the car, that's the important thing. For sure we'll be looking at Colin's times probably halfway through the rally, once we've done some work, etc. We will be doing quite a lot of suspension changes, differential changes on the rally. And I think, you know, towards halfway through the rally we'll start to look at Colin's times to see how competitive the car is.
If the previous rounds were anything to go by, Colin McRae's times would be pretty rapid. McRae had totally dominated the first two events in the championship and held a commanding 11-point lead over Kenny McKinstry, Trevor Smith and Alistair McRae. McKinstry decided to give Scotland a miss, but all the other top-place contenders were there. As a warmer-upper for the drivers and a bit of Friday night fun for spectators, the first two stages were high-speed laps the wrong way round one of Scotland's few racing circuits, Knock Hill. Robbie Head had his sights set on Alistair McRae, but it was Colin who confronted him here. In fact, the place was full of McRae's, with Colin testing a new gearbox.
That's the first rally we've done with the semi-automatic. So, you know, obviously we'll need to take our time and I'll need to get used to the obviously changing gear with the steering wheel instead of the gear stick. So it's all new.
And your Group N, of course, you've got that battle to go for.
Yes, we're leading Group N at the moment in the championship, so we've got to go flat out but think about that. So we'll keep that in the back of our mind.
And what about you, Jim?
Well, I've just got to learn how to drive the thing. I don't need to learn to use buttons.
It's getting a bit rusty now in his old age.
It was an early Saturday morning restart from Perth for the real rallying, and some good sunny weather was the order of the day for this, the 47th Scottish Rally. The tracks of central and northeast Scotland are renowned for their roughness. There was to be lots of dust for drivers and spectators. The route took it far north to the Grampians, 380 miles with 13 special stages in the forests. These stages totalled 95 miles, most of which have not been used on this rally for several years. Although Wilson's was only a test run, it was obvious from the word go that he would be clocking stunning times. Malcolm Wilson is one of Britain's few world-class drivers, but last won the Scottish Rally in 1985. He's had a frustrating year with few competition drives for Ford, spending most of his time testing cars. The Cumbrian will be hoping he can get his hands on the Escort for real in 1993.
For Colin McRae, it was a tricky situation. He had Wilson out in front trying to prove the Subaru was beatable, but more importantly, he had to remember to temper his enthusiasm so he could maintain his championship lead. And on top of all that, he had that new Formula One style gear changing mechanism with telephone type buttons on the steering wheel to contend with. Just watch that gear stick twitching about. But despite all the technology, sometimes old habits die hard. For Colin, the Scottish was squeezed in between the Acropolis and New Zealand World Championship rallies. A punishing schedule indeed, but all part of the ProDrive team's plans to develop him as a future world champion.
For many years, the name McRae meant Jimmy. 5 times British champion, he's competed on no less than 16 Scottish rallies. He has a less hectic programme now, but was out to show that the old magic was still there, even though the 1991 event was his last Forest Rally. As you'd expect on a home event, Scots were well represented, with Jimmy at 48 years of age still very much leader of the pack. Unlike most of the other top runners, Jimmy was in his own car, so perhaps there was a tendency to treat it with just that bit more respect.
Surprisingly, Trevor Smith, at 45, another veteran of the sport, has never competed in a Scottish rally before. His rally career started 15 years ago after he'd become British Auto Test champion driving an Austin Healey Sprite. Hailing from Burford in Oxfordshire, Smith is one of the most popular drivers in the championship, but his first Scottish was to prove a troublesome event and test his resilience to the utmost. On the first 2 rounds, Smith, despite being a renowned slow starter, managed to notch up a 2nd and a 6th to hold 2nd place in the series.
Several very fast young drivers have recently sprung onto the British rally scene. One of the best is Lanark driver Robbie Head, who went to school with Colin McRae and spent much of his youth in their household. Obviously, it paid off. Head, with co-driver Campbell Roy, was seated the highest of the Group N drivers. They were in good form, having just returned from rallying in South Africa.
Also in good form was young Richard Burns in his Group N Subaru Legacy. One of the few Englishmen among the young brat pack, Burns still had the comfort of Perth's Robert Reid sitting alongside him as usual.
The Scottish Rally was the first major forest event in Britain to allow the use of pace notes. Organisers allow all drivers through every stage at slow speeds for 2 days before the rally. Crews can then note the severity of bends, brows and bumps. For those who can't afford the extra expense or the time, the Royal Scottish Automobile Club, the organisers of the rally, will provide a standard set. It's accepted that pace notes make the chance of accidents less likely, even though it allows the cars to go faster.
This young Scot is really going places. Shell Scholarship winner Alistair McRae with David Senior know the forest well, but think the pace notes help considerably. 26-year-old Richard Forster from Wetherby, on the other hand, doesn't like pace notes at all. He reckons that blind rallies suit him best, putting everyone on the same level. Last year's Vauxhall Nova Challenge winner was lying 4th in the Lombard Junior Challenge and enjoying his first Highland fling. The youngest driver in the rally, Manxman Mark Higgins, was 2nd in the junior section in his works Vauxhall Nova.
Hot on his heels was his main adversary Johnny Milner in his private Peugeot 205. He was leading the juniors. Milner would be locked in this fierce battle with Higgins throughout. Their small 2-wheel drive machines, finding the rocky roads of Scotland a real challenge. Higgins got ahead early on before puncturing a front tyre. This let Milner through, but then he had engine problems. This battle would go on all weekend. Reading the pace notes for Milner is travel agent Chris Wood, whose father Mike was the winning co-driver of the Scottish Rally in 1966. Like most of the crews, they use a number system. The higher the number, the worse the bend.
100, left 3 and right 6, 50. Right 2, 100.
The telltale dust clouds of the rally were filling Drumtocty Forest when Malcolm Wilson and Brian Thomas brought their 140-mile-an-hour prototype in for another spot of attention near Stonehaven. The boffins were monitoring the car's every move and methodically testing new components. Wilson was in great form and regularly beating Colin McRae's times. For Alistair McRae, it was simply new wheels and also a chance for Group N rivals Louise Aitken-Walker and Mika Solberg to compare notes. In fact, the Group N section of the championship is one of the highlights of the series, pitching the youngest member of the McRae clan against his main rival and fellow Lanark resident Robbie Head. Unlike Alistair, who has the full backing of a professional team, Robbie has a harder job on his hands, running his own car and securing sponsorship to run it. Last year, he won the Group N award on the Scottish.
Louise Aitken-Walker is a stalwart of rallying and one of Britain's best-known drivers. Slightly down on power and unable to match the speed of the young bucks, as she calls them, her sheer consistency keeps her in second place in the Group N Championship. Richard Burns may regard himself as something of a stranger among all this Scottish talent, but was well up among his rivals. Providing the international element in the competition, Mika Solberg was lucky to be there. He took an exam in London the morning of the rally and made the Perth start with minutes to spare. Don Buckley has struggled all season in his underpowered Mazda with mechanical problems. Paul Dias from Lichfield prepares his own Group N Cosworth. One of the country's top clubmen, he started his rallying career in the navigator's seat, but changed sides when he realised he could do better than his driver. At least he'll appreciate Stuart Derry's efforts alongside him.
The Glasgow crew of John Gray and Fergus Loudon in their Group A Sierra were putting in amazing times, but it all went terribly wrong on stage 7 when they crashed into the trees. The stage was abandoned and the following cars badly delayed, but the crew escaped without serious injuries. Raymond Munro from Inverness was enjoying being in his own neck of the woods, but was forced to retire from the rally after rolling on stage 9 near Huntly. His car, as can be seen by our in-car camera in Johnny Milner's car, was relatively undamaged, but was later to be hit by another competitor, destroying Raymond's car completely.
And left 9.
Mika Solberg punctured a tyre on his Mitsubishi Galant on stage 9. He later lost the entire wheel and finished the stage on 3 wheels, with co-driver Steve Turvey sitting in the boot trying to lift the weight off the front corner.
Stage 9 was proving to be one of the horrors of the rally and claimed another victim when Neil Dugan and Stella Boyles fell off the road. Luckily, spectators got them back on again. Malcolm Wilson was going superbly, regularly beating Colin McRae's times. Although Colin said he was driving to protect his championship, one wondered if pride was at stake and he was really trying to beat the flying Wilson. Wasn't all plain sailing for Colin McRae and Derek Ringer, for on the Gartley stage there were serious problems on board the Subaru when the engine mysteriously lost all power.
What's the problem, Colin?
The engine's just stopped coming downhill towards the end of the stage there, and we don't know what's wrong with it. There's nothing, no wires off, nothing at all. It just won't start.
But I mean, this was actually in the stage, was it?
Just coming down, maybe 50 yards from the flying finish.
So he managed to coast over the finish line.
Freewheel down and out the stage. So I'll see if we can sort it. We don't know what's wrong with it yet.
While Colin was struggling, it was smiles all round in the Ford camp as the Escort Cosworth was fulfilling the team's hopes. Malcolm was loving every minute of it.
Oh, the car is just absolutely unbelievable. It's fantastic. I mean, you're not in the rally, and I can assure you it's not the same, but the adrenaline and it's fantastic to drive. It's a great feeling.
I was going to ask that. I mean, do you still have exactly the same adrenaline and everything, even though you're not competing?
Well, I think you do. I mean, you probably tend to think that you won't have, and you probably can't have really 100% because you're not actually competing against anybody in the rally. But on the other hand, once the car starts to go well and you're happy with the handling and you've got the confidence in the car, it's just a fantastic feeling to be able to drive quickly and be very competitive, even though we're not competing.
Robbie Head was really charging, and by the 10th stage had climbed to 3rd overall to lead the Group N brigade. he was enjoying a trouble-free run, managing to avoid getting any punctures. By driving at 10 tenths, was intent on pulling away from friend and rival Alistair McRae.
The youngest McRae was having none of this, of course, and really started to pile on the pressure, hoping to regain the time lost when he had to drive with 2 rear punctures earlier in the day at the dreaded Drumtochty Forest. This caused damage to the differential and rear beam, and McRae and Senior were forced to make an impromptu service halt at an abandoned petrol station near Bankery, and could only stand and watch, giving a passable impression of 2 petrol pump attendants on a quiet day. They weren't the only ones to make an unscheduled stop, for Mark Higgins and Cliff Simmons were also having troubles in the Nova.
He jumped out the ruts with the puncture in the back, bent the beam and broke the drive shaft, so we had to drive through the next stage with a knackered shaft.
We bent the beam on that one and got a front puncture. I used to do a drive shaft on that one. Lost 3 minutes of Johnny on that, so... 3? Yeah, went off start line, first, second, bang. So we took it through to the end. It's all good fun, isn't it?
What was bad news for Higgins was just the opposite for arch rival Milner, who'd had the joy of passing his friend in the one-wheel drive Nova.
Caution, crest, immediate left 6. Immediate left 6. 100.
This is rallying at its best, and after repairs, Higgins took the bull by the horns. The 20-year-old determined to get back in the hunt and show Milner he was far from finished. But it hadn't all been easy going for Milner and Wood.
We also had a puncture which cost us 1 minute and 45 to him. We then drove Clash and Derrick very steadily and cautiously to avoid puncturing and dropped another 40 seconds to him. So now we're back on pushing it again, but I think he's about 50 seconds behind us now.
Oh, so there's still a good little race there then?
Oh, that's it. He's catching slowly but surely, but I'm trying my best to pull away from him again now.
Milner and Higgins were not the only two to be going full chat. For another strong contender in the up to 1600cc class, Richard Forster was also driving like a man possessed, but would roll out of the rally on stage 11.
By mid-afternoon, the lovely Scottish weather had taken a turn for the worse. At the Orford regroup, it wasn't just the rain giving problems. The delay after Gray's accident caused all but 7 cars to run half an hour late on the road. The rain may have dampened the dust, but it didn't dampen Malcolm Wilson's spirits as he continued his textbook drive in the Escort. For Richard Burns, things were also looking good. The former Peugeot Club champion was putting in a superb drive in his Group N Subaru, fully aware that the eyes of the ProDrive bosses were focused on him.
Back in Group A, the ultra-experienced Jimmy McRae with new navigator Dougie Patterson showed he was still well in touch. Trevor Smith and Roger Jones were having a bad rally in their Cosworth with a succession of mechanical aggravations. Now sporting a new white bumper assembly after a collision with a deer in the Clash in Darrett stage, Alistair McRae was back in business and up into 2nd place overall.
I must admit they're driving extremely well, all of them, and you know, I don't know what it is, young blood or whatever. Maybe I'm getting a bit old.
Robbie Head was also pushing hard, just 17 seconds away from Alistair, holding 5th place ahead of Louise.
I mean, it's like the best competition I've had in a long time. It's a good...
And speaking of racing, Colin McRae was at the front of the field, a full 4 minutes ahead of brother Alistair.
The dream is coming true, isn't it? The McRae 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, but I didn't plan to be 3rd.
Back in Perth, there was a welcome few hours rest for the tired crews before another early start and day 3. Although the bright sun of the previous morning was missing, there would still be another day of dust on the last leg of the rally, which took the cars on a trip to the Trossachs before looping north back to Perth. It will be a shorter day with just 50 miles of stages in a road section of 264 miles. At the start of the first stage of the day, Mark Higgins was just 15 seconds behind Johnny Milner. The battle would resume with a vengeance, although no one would wager on the outcome.
The Glen Devon stage had more than its fair share of rocks, and driving in his usual spirited way, Milner suffered a front puncture and lost 38 seconds to his rival. That put Higgins back on top by 23 seconds. Head was continuing his charge, determined to penetrate the trio of McRae's at the top of the field. He was so serious that he dispensed with any unnecessary weight and jokingly thought about leaving co-driver Campbell Roy behind. He removed his spare wheel and wheel brace for the short stages and even threw out our in-car camera after this stage 18 at De Villa. McRae Sr. was fully aware of Robbie's intentions, so he too was pulling out the stops to the detriment of his bodywork.
We left the bumper at the gate post in Blair Adam, unfortunately. Hope somebody picks it up and brings it back because they cost a lot.
Colin McRae knew that no one was a major threat to him, though he was still more than a little interested in Malcolm Wilson's times. Had Wilson's scores been counted for results, Malcolm would be nearly 2 minutes ahead of Colin at this point. Wilson was still piling on the coals and showing just what potential the new Escort has. The rallying grocers from Ulster, Ian and Ewell Calvin, were holding 13th place. Don Buckley from the Scottish Borders was driving to the limit as usual, but he and Dougie Redpath would soon head for retirement with a hold sump.
Richard Burns was continuing his charge, holding a fine 5th place, but would kick himself later in the day when he slid off the track near the end of the rally and dropped to 10th. With Richard Forster out of the way, Nick Hutchinson from Clitheroe would finish 18th to put himself 3rd in the Junior Challenge behind Higgins and Milner. Neil Duggan and Stella Boyles were in the top 10, but they'd been in the wars, although it wasn't just the stages that were responsible.
This was Colin McRae passing us on the way after he had his problems at Gartley yesterday.
Really?
And he misjudged the amount of room he had and we came off worst, but we'll take advantage of it because we went off in a corner later and it's part and parcel of this bump, so he'll pay for it all.
After a trouble-free day, Louise's Cosworth lost its turbo boost and struggled slowly through the last 2 stages of the rally, but would still make 5th. Paul Dias got in her dust, which slowed him somewhat, which meant that Trevor Smith made better times and inherited 6th place after a rally dogged by mechanical gremlins.
Caution, crashed into right 3.
The famous Higgins-Milner battle went in Higgins' favour. They finished 8th and 9th, 48 seconds apart, both passing Burns, who had come to grief in the second last stage. Jimmy McRae really had a struggle on his hands, with just 4 seconds separating him from 3rd place, but Robbie Head held him off. You could say Jimmy was beaten by a short head. Alistair McRae and David Senior had had a magnificent rally in their Scholarship Sierra and couldn't have hoped for a better result.
For big brother Colin, things had not gone as smoothly as usual. After his mystery engine problem, the Subaru's head gasket went on the last but one stage and he was lucky to finish. Malcolm Wilson's public test session had been superb. Most of the crowds had come to see him and they weren't disappointed. Regardless of Wilson's efforts, Colin McRae had once again proved that he's far and away Britain's brightest hope. It's no mean feat to win all 3 rounds of the championship to date so convincingly.
Colin McRae and Derek Ringer won by 4 minutes 29 seconds from brother Alistair, but Robbie Head pipped Jimmy, thus preventing a McRae treble. Louise Aitken-Walker and Tina Turner again showed their staying power, and Trevor Smith's 6th place pushed him down in the championship to 3rd overall behind Alistair. In the Group N category of the rally, Alistair McRae won and retains his lead in the championship. Despite Robbie Head's good Scottish result, Louise is still lying 2nd overall. The Junior Challenge is something of a two-horse race now, with Higgins' win in the Scottish putting him ahead of Milner by just 1 point. Nick Hutchinson is some way behind.
The civic dignitaries were out in force in City Square as Perth and Kinross had sponsored the rally. They were there to welcome Colin McRae and Derek Ringer, who had won their second successive Scottish. But it would be a brief visit to the finish ramp as the duo were off to New Zealand 10 minutes later.
Congratulations, this is getting a bit of a habit, isn't it?
It's a bit, isn't it? It's been quite a hard event. We thought we were going to come here and it would be fairly easy, but we've had quite a few problems on the way, and we're just very lucky to get here tonight.
And not a bad result for the McRae family as a whole.
Not bad at all. I mean, Alistair's went very well, and the old man's just taking up the rear there.
So there we are, the winners of the 1992 Perth Scottish Rally, Colin McRae, Derek Ringer and Subaru.
Right 5, on bridge, left 5. Go 100, left 6. 150. Right 4 left, 120. Right 3, and long left 4. The left 3 open, 70. Left 2 open, go 150. Left 4 above there, go 300. Left 3 over crest, right 2, go 400. Left 5 over crest. Left 9. Flat crest middle. 120. Flat crest middle. 120. Left 2. 100. Right 3 over crest jumping. 150. Left 1 over crest. Go 500. Left 3 right 2 over crest. Go 500. Left 6. Go 500. Crest, long right 3 over 100.
Right 8 and left 2 over crest and right 6 150. Caution crest, immediate left 6. immediate left 6, 100. Right 5 and a bridge, immediate left 5. And right 3 into left 8, left 8, 100. Right 3, 100. Right 3, 50. Left 5. And left 3, 50. Left 3, 100. Left 3, 400. Don't cut it too sharp. Right 1 over crest and right 2, 100, left 4, left 4, 50, right 3, 100, right 2 tightens, tightens into left 2 and right 3 and crest and another crest into right 2, 150, left 2 you're coming to, and right 2 over crest, into left 2, very long, 100.
Having charged about the forests of Wales, England and Scotland, Northern Ireland was next on the agenda with the Elbow Ulster Rally. The Elbow? It's not a famous rally bend, but a Belfast nightclub. On this rally we've lost the usual forests, for in Ulster it's closed public roads, secured and controlled by no less than 1,500 local marshals, some of whom get their elbows in a twist. An enthusiastic and knowledgeable crowd gathers on most corners, keeping clear of the roads. There are, of course, always a few stragglers, sensibly following the official directions.
At the halfway point in the Mobil 1 Top Gear Championship, Colin McRae has maximum points to lead from younger brother Alistair, with Trevor Smith and Louise Aitken-Walker hotly in pursuit.
Much attention was focused on the Irish drivers. Kenny McKinstry was back in championship action, top tarmac specialist Bertie Fisher was out to defend his last year's win, and up from the south was Frank Marr, fresh from his success on the Circuit of Ireland Rally. And joining them for his first event in the series, Vauxhall's top driver Dave Metcalfe from Cumbria. But the biggest attraction at the start line was former boxing world champion Barry McGuigan.
I'm going to be sensible and get round there as best I can and get as many miles in as I can. You know, realistically, this is my first rally. You know, I've got to learn to listen to Brian Hardy, and he's an exceptionally good co-driver. I've got to learn to listen to him and take that on board. And it's sometimes difficult when you look at the road ahead to listen to. I've certainly found that the most difficult thing, to listen to the co-driver. You know, when you're actually seeing what's in front of you. But that's one thing I've got to do. This is a long rally. And, you know, I'm looking forward to the next 2 days. I'm really keen.
Everyone was equally keen to get onto the Irish lanes, the first leg, an anti-clockwise circuit of Lough Neagh, 9 stages of the 185 stage miles, which make up the Ulster Rally.
So that's Barry McGuigan on his way.
Amazingly, Barry said he felt more nervous before this event than before his biggest fight. Robin Phillips, on the other hand, seemed even more concerned, having left an important bit of the car on the start ramp. In case you don't recognise it, this messes his exhaust pipe.
The first day's stages make up 1/3 of the mileage of the Ulster Rally, and they're very accessible for spectators. For Colin McRae, the Ulster has never been a kind event. He finished a lowly 8th in 1990 and last year was in the lead when transmission problems forced him out. Unlike the Scottish, where he experimented with the semi-automatic gearbox, no chances were being taken in this event, notorious for pushing gearboxes to the limit.
The lanes come in all shapes and sizes, and changes of direction come thick and fast. And what's more, you don't have to give way. Local hero Bertie Fisher is no stranger to these lanes. He first won the Ulster in 1982 and again last year. He and Colin McRae shared honours on the first 2 stages this year, leaving only 1 second between the 2 Subarus.
Last year, young Mark Higgins was an amazing 8th in his private Suzuki. This year, the current Lombard Junior Challenge leader in a Works Nova was perhaps trying to prove that he was on a par with his teammate and mentor, Dave Metcalfe. But driving on the limit, he crashed out on stage 2.
Metcalfe, meanwhile, was showing no signs that this was only his 2nd rally this year, leaving his braking to the very last second. Frank Marr from Tipperary, although on his first visit to the Ulster, was strongly fancied, but he had already had turbo problems.
Last year's Irish tarmac champion Kenny McKinstry, Ireland's only seeded rally driver, was keeping in close touch with Colin McRae and Bertie Fisher. Only 7 seconds separated them after the first 2 stages. With Robbie Philpott calling the tune, the lawnmower man was well on song.
Don't cut, 60, turn 6 right, don't cut. 60.
Unknown to them, problems were already developing.
80.
Fighting his corner, but only just, was Barry McGuigan in his Sierra Cosworth. Despite all his good intentions, he was already on the ropes when he hit the scenery on the very first stage. When he emerged, he found young Garth McCartney hot on his heels. McGuigan had been off the road for 4 minutes, and it was only the muscle power of his Irish fans and his troop of dedicated mechanics who got him back into the fray.
This is yours, I believe, Barry, is it? Another bit of the car.
Yeah. Well, Brian, what happened?
You tell me, what did happen?
He wasn't listening.
Yeah, that's right. I just didn't listen to the first square left. It's a relatively easy one. Then it tightens very quickly.
What, did you just go over a bank or something?
Just into a hedge, basically into a hedge. And the problem was, Tony, we could have been much quicker. Only there were only about sort of 3 or 4 guys around, and we had to call in fellas from quite a distance back. So that's what took so long.
I'm glad he's done it early, to be honest, rather than later on when we'd be going a lot quicker. You know, otherwise we'd have a big accident. So it's, you know, there's 3 cars out already. Long rally, so just keep it in. You know, steady, and we'll have an all right result.
So you didn't hit him for being a naughty boy?
I did. I was hitting him and swearing and everything.
Almost.
It was all right though.
So there you go.
Well done. What's that you're drinking?
Go juice. This is worth 5 seconds a mile.
Is it working today?
Not at the moment because the engine isn't. We're just going to tip some into the tank.
Colin's going very quickly. Colin was 3 seconds quicker on the first stage and he was 1 second slower on the second one, so Kenny's going quickly, so obviously there's 3 or 4 of us all in there together, you know, but it's obviously very early days in the rally.
At Ballymena, McKinstry's heavy hammermen were at work.
Oh, we've busted diff casing. Problem is we don't have another one, so we're just having a look here and seeing whether we can maybe patch it up or whatever. But it's a bit early in the rally for to have a problem.
Although Mark Higgins' retirement had robbed the Junior Championship of some of its sparkle, there was still plenty of hot competition in the other categories. Group A cars held the first 6 places, with the usual close battle in Group N. Paul Dyers, currently 3rd in this section of the championship, was getting to grips with the stages.
Turn right 9.
Fantastic, really nice, fast. There's a few yumps in them that we haven't noticed on the recce because you could only do 25 mile an hour, but otherwise really good.
What do you think of all these Irish drivers?
Mad. On the road they're lunatics. But obviously the Irish lads over here around their own lanes are very, very quick.
And grandfather Ernest is as quick as most of them.
I'm in a small car class, of course, so I'm only really driving for the fun of the thing. But as long as I'm getting a dice with somebody, I'm very happy.
And you think that is the appeal of rallying?
As far as I'm concerned, the appeal is going down a road as quick as I can and knowing there's nothing coming the other way, and actually just the sheer excitement of it.
For the first time in this championship, Colin McRae and Derek Ringer are not having it all their own way. On 2 of the first 4 stages, Bertie Fisher actually set fastest times. With only a second separating them, people started to wonder if McRae was fallible after all. Colin, of course, was determined to prove otherwise, despite a spluttering engine.
McKinstry's men had appeared to work miracles, and he was back in business.
1 left and 2 left, 60. Caution, bumps into 2 right, 150.
His mechanical problems were about to prove terminal, though. His patched-up diff gave up the ghost at the end of stage 3, and he headed for home.
Round 3 was also the big KO for Barry McGuigan. He'd had another accident and with typical determination tried to carry on, but the damage was more serious than it looked, and the popular Irishman had to call it a day.
Mixing it at the top of the field was the fastest forklift driver in Belfast, David Greer. Driving an old-style 2-wheel drive Cosworth, he was set to inherit McKinstry's 3rd place. Needless to say, Alistair McRae and David Senior were in attendance in Ulster to defend their Group N championship lead. Although not able to match the power of the Group A cars, Alistair was, nevertheless, proving his immense talent by rapidly climbing from 10th to 4th overall.
A charging Nova like this can only mean one driver, Dave Metcalf, the king of the 2-wheel drive. Also with 2-wheel drive, but at the other end of the car, Frank Marr seems to have got over his assorted problems. The Irish Championship leader setting consistently fast times in his Cosworth.
Although she'd badly strained her back before the rally and was somewhat strapped up, you wouldn't really notice, for Louise Aitken-Walker was pedalling her Cosworth as neatly as ever. Also with problems, but not of the medical variety, was Trevor Smith, who not for the first time this year had suffered a blown turbo.
One of the newer names to emerge this year is Nick Hutchinson, the 24-year-old Lancastrian, figuring in both the Lombard Junior and the Vauxhall Challenge.
Come on. Fast left. Into flat right. 50. Flat jump. 20.
Sadly, he'd not been without his problems either earlier in the day and had dropped to the back of the field. Making a much bigger mark among the juniors is Johnny Milner, driving a newly built lighter Peugeot 205.
Taking a full 2 days to get to Northern Ireland from Norway, Bernd Kollivold managed to push his small Fiat down hills very quickly. But not quite so quickly up them. And there's a husband and wife team, Mr. and Mrs. Cannell. One man who obviously doesn't mind his wife telling him where to go, and not from the back seat. the outsider, rallying may seem a crazy sport, and some of the drivers think so too. So why on earth do they do it?
Oh, Lord only knows. Foolish game, isn't it? For sure. It's good fun.
I don't know. I don't know, because I stood at the start, well, I was sat in the car at the start and I was frightened to death. I've never been that scared. It's the first international and I was scared.
It never seems to be short of an adventure. If it was straightforward, I think it would be time to give up.
I don't know, I wish we knew so we could get a cure for it.
Frank Marr was up to 6th as the rally drew towards the end of the first day. There was a tight battle going on among the Sierra ranks. Rob Barry from Manchester was up in 4th. Alistair McRae was sandwiched between them in 5th. And of course, heading Group N. Only 16 seconds covered the 3. With a reseed for the next day, everyone was fighting for that vital place. And the ever-smiling Paul Dias with Stuart Derry was starting to head towards the top 10.
Tight left 9. 75. Turn right 9. 100.
While Scotland has the McRae dynasty, Northern Ireland has its equivalent, the McCartneys. 21-year-old Garth is showing the style that could make him a star of the future. Another young man in a hurry, Yorkshireman Richard Forster, is 4th in the juniors and hunting for more points.
As they burst out of the lanes on the last stage of the day onto the major roads of Craigavon, the light was deteriorating, but more importantly, so was the weather, and drivers started to be caught out. Richard Hemingway's pirouette was clearly caused by the weather change, but there was still confusion regarding Mark Higgins's ignominious exit from the rally earlier in the day.
I don't really know what happened, to be honest. I think it's just some bumps caught him out, which is a little problem of this rally, where you reckon the stages at 30-40 miles an hour and then you go over at 90-100 miles an hour, and there's bumps there that you don't find when you're going slowly. And I think it was just probably one of them situations that he found some bumps at speed which he hadn't found on the recce.
So what advice will you give him when you see him later?
I'll just give him a pat on the back and say hard luck.
You lost a bit of time earlier. What was that about, Nick?
Yeah, on stage 3 we broke the throttle cable actually. We weren't sure at first, but we soon realised, and it's quite exciting because Clive got under the bonnet and held the throttle open manually, and we got into a safe place. But obviously I couldn't see to steer with the bonnet being up, so it was quite hectic and shouting and noise. And I saw a Peugeot coming very fast behind, and I'm going like this to Clive to get away because I thought he was coming in the back. Anyway, he managed to get round.
A co-driver's jobs are many and varied. It's not just a matter of reading pace notes. But when it comes to pace notes, there's no one better than Derek Ringer. One thing that fascinates many people is Derek's low seating position. In fact, it's so low, I'm surprised he can see over the dashboard. Nevertheless, he was keeping Colin McRae at the head of the pack, with a little help from Colin himself, of course.
Bertie Fisher was not far behind McRae's exhaust pipe though, just 30 seconds as the cars headed for final servicing and Parc Fermé back in Belfast, where the crews would get about 4 hours sleep if they were lucky. Day 2 was another loop around Lough Neagh, this time clockwise, going as far out as Enniskillen. 11 hard stages left, 135 miles in all.
The gods hadn't smiled too kindly on the drivers overnight. It was a cold, dark, damp start at 4 o'clock in the morning, and after a night of rain, tyre choice was going to be critical. As predicted by many, the first few stages were going to prove crucial in deciding the winners and losers of this event. Colin McRae's still misfiring Subaru started the proceedings. Hot on Colin's heels and determined to make up ground, Bertie Fisher was already showing battle scars from close encounters with the Irish scenery. By the end of this 8-mile stage, he was in desperate trouble.
Have you just been off in there?
Just at the very end there. What happened, Colin?
He just skidded off a little bit, nothing too bad though.
Things were starting to look grim for last year's winner.
It's always nice when dawn breaks on a rally, but not on this occasion for Alistair McRae, who'd set blistering times on the first two stages of the morning until it all went rather wrong.
Just about half a mile down the road there, approached a K-right +2, just a little too fast, and the car locked up. Went through the hedge, and just the other side of the hedge was just a ditch, a large ditch. Cars landed in it and it's stuck. It's not damaged really at all, maybe past the front slightly, but we're not going any further.
Johnny Milner and Chris Wood were up in the top 10 and totally dominating the junior championship, but also not without their share of problems. In fact, Johnny was so busy effecting repairs that co-driver Chris had to do the explaining.
Oh, well, we slid wide on a corner, not so far from the end, but it clipped something on the outside, Johnny's side, and it knocked the rear wheel more or less straight off. It didn't really part company with the car until we'd finished the stage, but even so, it's they're just replacing the hub and what have you.
Meanwhile, Battling Bertie was well and truly in the wars and on his way to retirement.
We had a fence and burst the radiator, and it was only a couple of 100 yards to the end of the stage, but by the time the boys got a radiator in it, obviously the damage was done, and we did the next stage but decided to switch it off at the end before we do any more damage, you know.
Oh, so that's rather disappointing.
Yeah, it is disappointing, but that's rallying. Not a lot we can do about it.
With his nearest opposition out of the fray, Colin McRae on the second run of the Brantry Wood stage could ease his pace enough to inspect his little brother's escapade. Rallying attracts all sorts of spectators. Including a few million people watching over your shoulder if you carry our onboard camera. Here, Nick Hutchinson, with all sorts of gear selection problems, was providing the entertainment.
Into slight right tightens, 40 medium left, 70. Shit. Get out.
Trevor Smith, in his Group A Sierra, had got over his assorted problems and was back in the groove, climbing up the leaderboard and up to 8th.
Metcalf, who's had his share of mechanical problems over the years, was having a good rally this time, up in 5th place in the Nova, but earlier in the day he came a little too close for comfort on this junction. Maybe a touch of the handbrake next time, Dave. Other Nova drivers had not been so fortunate, and Richard Forster was moments away from an undignified exit with engine failure. Rob Barry was battling to regain time after a damaged gearbox saga, hoping to win back the 4th place he'd lost.
Service points in Ireland are really something special. The entire main streets are turned into glorified garages. On this rally, much of the work is to do with tyres.
Hello, what's happened here then? I think the tyres got a bit tired on that stage. Don't you?
How many miles has that done?
Just done 2 stages. I can't understand that.
Why is it so badly worn? Is it out of track?
No, I think it's just braking very hard. I think that's all it is, but it's unbelievable. It's even gone out of shape.
The correct tyre choice is vital if you're going to avoid this sort of occurrence.
Keep it going.
Works teams have a huge array of tyre types and compounds to choose from, but privateers, like Paul Dias, have to make do and mend, recutting treads in their own tyres to try to suit the conditions, with varying degrees of success. All of which can have a dramatic effect on the body styling of your car.
Trevor Cathers was having no such worries, and his Sierra was still unscathed, heading for 8th place overall. Johnny Milner, sporting a new front wing, took the honours in the junior category, cheered on by other famous youngsters, Mark Higgins, Cliff Simmons and Richard Burns. Back in rally action after his recent marriage, Robin Phillips was climbing the leaderboard and up to 5th before crashing out 2 stages from the end.
Louise Aitken-Walker, in Ford's Group N Cosworth, moved up to 3rd place in the overall championship after finishing 6th in Ulster, 1 ahead of Trevor Smith, who now lies 2nd in his Group A version. Smith had more misfortune with another blown turbo on the last stage and was lucky to make 7th place. Louise was now firmly in the lead of Group N and, thanks to Alistair McRae's retirement, now heads the Group N championship. At the end of the day, some fail and some succeed.
Among those succeeding was Scott Bradshaw, winning his class by almost 2 minutes in his dancing Daihatsu. Winning his class by an amazing 9.5 minutes was championship regular Steve Wedgbury in his Skoda Favorit. And the galloping granddad Ernest McMillan also won his class in the tiny Suzuki Swift.
Dave Metcalf took 4th overall and got another class win by an Irish mile. In the closing stages, Frank Marr put in a great charge for 2nd place, but had to settle for 3rd behind David Greer, who went on to take his best ever Ulster result. The apparently unstoppable Colin McRae may have looked vulnerable at the beginning of the event, but by the end he had yet again demonstrated how to push home an advantage, winning the rally by a massive 11 minutes. McRae had driven the Ulster like a true professional and made it all his own, but regretted that his main rivals hadn't stayed with him to give him a better run for his money.
For Colin McRae and Derek Ringer, this was their biggest ever winning margin in the championship. 2 Irish drivers, David Greer and Frank Marr, filled the next places ahead of Dave Metcalf in his little Vauxhall Nova. In Group N, Louise Aitken-Walker and Swedish co-driver Tina Turner had a convincing win, their first in the championship. Local driver Trevor Cathers managed to hold off championship regular Paul Dias. In the Lombard Junior Challenge, Johnny Milner now has a commanding lead over the luckless Mark Higgins and Nick Hutchinson, who failed to score.
And so it was yet more champagne for Colin McRae and Derek Ringer, who've proved that they're as good on tarmac as they are in the forests. The next round of the Mobil 1 Top Gear Championship is also on tarmac. It's the Manx International Rally and it holds the key to the championship.
Slight left, 40. Flat left, 40. Jump. And fast left. And caution, fast right tightens. Keep right into easy left. And flat right. And fast left, and fast right over crest, into slight right tightens, 40 medium left, 70, shit, get out, get up the road and slow down, Nick.
Left 3, 50. Left 2 long, 20, turn open hairpin right.
Competitors in the Mobil won Top Gear British Rally Championship took to the high seas for round 5 in the Isle of Man, famous the world over for its TT motorbike races. The 30th Manx International Rally was, appropriately enough, run in 3 legs. An all-tarmac event, it had the best international entry of the year, including a group of 40 Citroëns taking part in a French-based championship. Not to mention Michael Karlfuss's 42 horsepower Trabant, which had trundled all the way from eastern Germany.
On the previous round of the championship in Ulster, the Group N crown was all but handed to Louise Aiken-Walker, thanks to a bit of over-exuberance by 21-year-old Alistair McRae. So his approach to the Manx would be interesting.
Well, obviously with the Ulster the accident, then the Group N Championship's a bit far-fetched now. But we've got to still think that if Louise has a problem, then it's still possible. So we want to go out here and win Group N.
Louise had put in a textbook drive in Ulster to keep her lead in the Group N Championship. All she had to do was to finish reasonably well in this event. Reigning Irish tarmac champion Kenny McKinstry and fellow Ulsterman Bertie Fisher had both retired in Ulster, but were back to challenge the dominant pro-drive Subaru of the seemingly unstoppable Colin McRae. Also aiming to repeat his 1988 win was Belgian ace Patrick Sniers.
We have a good chance. We don't need to have a problem with the car, but there are 3 Subarus and they're all very fast, especially Colin's car is very fast and he's a good driver. If you don't roll the car, it will be difficult to beat him.
Despite the compact size of the Isle of Man, just 220 square miles, this is the longest round of the championship, with 250 stage miles, as the route crisscrosses the island from its base in the capital Douglas.
Despite suffering from a bout of flu, Colin McRae was in fine form after hitting the headlines on the recent World Championship Thousand Lakes Rally. There he'd finished 8th, despite numerous rolls which virtually demolished the car. But he'd made himself a star in Finland, the home of rallying. On the Manx, he was back with a semi-automatic gearbox, which fortunately can be used in manual mode. And the need arose on this junction when it found itself in neutral and caused him to overshoot. All of which meant more work for the Subaru mechanics at the first service point at St John's in the centre of the island.
First 2 stages it was really good, but there's just been a small problem with it in the last stage, so they've taken it out just now just to play around with it and try and sort it out, and then we'll put it back in later.
Must be all very confusing for you.
It is a bit, going back and forward and listening to bass notes, so it's quite interesting.
The last time reigning Belgian champion Patrick Sniers visited the Isle of Man, he won, driving a BMW. Although his Ford Cosworth this year was faster, the car was not handling as well, and he claimed it was airborne too much for his liking.
I feel I can go much quicker, but it's not possible with this car.
So can you do anything to the suspension now?
We will try, we will take a different setting and we will see how it's going, but in any case McRae is maybe too fast.
Although the suspension had been rearranged, Patrick was busy rearranging the bodywork as well. Bertie Fisher has never won the Manx, but has come pretty close on a few occasions. The 1990 Irish champion was determined to give Colin McRae something to think about. Like Bertie Fisher's, Kenny McKinstry's is a privately owned Subaru, so all the preparation for the event is down to him. Much of the decisions concern the right choice of tyres, and there appears to be considerable room for confusion.
You have one thing in your head until, you know, just the start of the event, and then you think, it's fairly cold out there this morning, we'll try a softer compound because it is cold. And you just get caught out. You know, you're always trying to get an advantage, and somewhere along the line it's going to backfire on you, and that's usually what happens with us silly drivers, you know.
In the important Group N so-called showroom category, Alistair McRae was driving somewhat more steadily than usual and aiming for a win which would give him a B seed in the World Driver Rankings. Already the proud possessor of a B seed, former World Ladies Rally champion Louise Aitken-Walker was taking it even more steadily, determined to avoid any trouble and maintain her championship lead. Everything seemed to be going according to plan.
100%. So far, so good. But no, we have Alistair in front of us, which was normal. But we're second to Alistair, so we're quite happy with that.
Thanks to his World Championship exploits, Colin McRae holds a coveted A seed, one of only 2 Britons to do so. But he shows that even A seeds can get it wrong sometimes. By now, having completely abandoned the semi-automatic gearbox, Colin still managed 5th fastest over the notoriously bumpy Druidale. By this 8th stage, he was 28 seconds clear of the fighting Fisher and McKinstry. One of the best drives of the day was by the man in the delightful pink helmet, Dave Metcalfe. He has made a habit of giant-killing performances on the Manx International in previous years in his 2-wheel drive Vauxhall Nova. This year, of course, was no exception. Sitting alongside him must have its moments.
Oh, it's not too bad, really. I mean, everybody from the outside thinks that I must be crazy, but sometimes I do, but it's not too bad at all, really. It's got it all under control.
Johnny Milner was out for a steady drive in his Peugeot 205 and even had time to practice his reversing techniques on the way. The deserved winner of the Shell Scholarship for 1993 battled back from his early error to show his true form, making the Peugeot dance at every opportunity. After his accident in Ulster, which not only dented his car but also his chance of junior championship honours, Mark Higgins was out to prove he was still a force to be reckoned with. Co-driver Cliff Simmons not only has to read the notes but also offer encouragement to his driver from time to time.
Absolute left long 40, left 6, 50. Right 5 over the finish, watch him. Absolute left, absolute right. Brilliant.
21-year-old Mark, who lives in Onken near Douglas, was virtually driving in his own back garden on this event, which must be something of an advantage.
But he wasn't the only member of the Higgins family out for a drive through the Manx country lanes. Father and mother, Tony and Christina, were also there driving their Volkswagen Golf GTI, so there must be some rivalry in the family.
Well, we're always jibing at each other, and they know more than I do now.
I think Mark's taken after his dad. Yeah, he's definitely taken after his dad. But I think we're getting not too many more years left now. We thought this might be the one year where we could all do it together. And I think we'd have to start selling cars and things off to keep these boys going.
Boys, did she say? Yes, because young 19-year-old David was there competing in his first major rally.
Must be from when Mum and Dad used to push us around the chip in the prams or something. But like I've been doing kart racing for the last 7 years, so this year's the first. Like I've only been rallying for 7 months, so it's good. There's no more left to come yet unless we can get the dogger driving licence.
At the other end of the scale, 45-year-old Trevor Smith from Oxfordshire was also driving in his first Manx International Rally, assisted as usual by co-driver Roger Jones.
Over crest, 100, post 3 left, and 2 left opening, 100, crest, dip, flat crest, 50, flat crest, 100, 2 left, flat crest 100, 1 left and crest 2 right.
The ultra-experienced Trevor was driving neatly and quickly, making very few errors, unlike the Irish duo of David Greer and Frank Marr in their two-wheel drive Ford Cosworths, who seem to be playing a game all of their own. Greer performed all sorts of heroics but went out with engine trouble later on, and Marr appeared in grave danger of following in his footsteps.
Mike Rimmer from Buckinghamshire in his BMW was definitely on the rampage and seemed more intent on demolishing bits of our camera equipment. It's all in a day's work for rally drivers and cameramen alike.
We had a shock absorber go earlier on, which just created a great big cloud of smoke, and we had a gearbox change after having stopped within the last stage for a minute, and we destroyed one of your tripods.
Oh, thank you very much.
Send us the bill.
There's always hot competition to be the best Manxman on the event. Gary Lees from Crosby seemed all set for this role this year, up in the top 10. Leading the Citroën brigade was Bruno de Ferreri from the south of France. And Mike Williams from the north of Wales was leading the Vauxhall Challenge.
Halfway through the first day, Colin McRae and Derek Ringer in the Subaru were well in command, with a 30-second lead over Bertie Fisher and Kelly McKinstry, themselves just seconds apart. Patrick Snyers was in an unhappy fourth place, and Dave Metcalf was not far behind. Yet again, McRae was looking uncatchable. Patrick Snyers was still in the wars, modifying his car at every turn and losing time to boot, making the Sierra sound more like the Trabant.
Speaking of which, here comes the real thing, soon to embark on the major spectator stage through the ancient capital of the Isle of Man, Castletown.
There were still 6 more stages after Castletown that evening, with a stop in St John's for the cars to be fettled, as they say in rallying. Among those, Gary Lees, who, would you believe, was not using pace notes, just driving the stages from memory, and boy, do you need a good memory. Mark Higgins also knows the roads like the back of his hand, but likes a little help from his friend in the next seat.
Right 4, left 4. 30, left 5, and left 4.5. Right 5 over crest, 30, left 5.
On stage 18, the unthinkable happened. Colin McRae lost the lead of the event to Bertie Fisher. How could Bertie get ahead of Colin and be the first person to beat him on the leaderboard all year? Was Colin off the pace? Not to mention off the road. Clearly, something was wrong for McRae to drop almost 30 seconds in just 4 stages.
We went out from this service last time with a small brake problem and just didn't really get going. It wasn't a problem, it was just taking it very easy. If I had realised that, I might have gone a bit quicker.
It was a less than ecstatic Bertie Fisher who came into the overnight halt after a puncture on the final stage of the leg put him nearly a full minute down on McRae.
Day 2 started on the windswept hills to the south of Snaefell. Colin McRae got over his nasty shock of nearly being beaten the night before. He was back stamping his authority on the proceedings, and on the first 2 stages alone, he took 23 seconds off his nearest challenger. The roads in the north of the island are wider and more open and totally suit the driving style of the youngest ever British champion, now looking set to clinch the title again on this event.
Kenny McKinstry was complaining that it was taking a long time to warm up his tyres and he was losing time, not only to McRae but also to Bertie Fisher, who was keeping his Irish Championship hopes alive as well as keeping an eye on Colin McRae, just in case.
For the luckless Sniers, it was far from a good morning. The outside of the Ford was again shipshape, but the same could not be said for what was under the bonnet. Very soon, Patrick was back in his hotel before heading home to Belgium.
Well, not the best rally for you, this one.
No, this was not my rally. We had really bad luck, and from the beginning it was not working like I wanted. And now today we broke the engine.
Mechanical problems are always rife in rallying, and Mark Higgins had already had a new gearbox and differential fitted. He was shortly to need a new front wing. Mark was up to 8th despite his persistent problems.
Vauxhall Novas are a commentator's nightmare. They all look alike. This particular model is the Yorkshire version of Richard Forster, who admitted rallies on roads weren't really his cup of tea.
Much prefer the Forest. It comes much more naturally to me. Tarmac, you've got to be much more committed. It sounds silly, but the car stops a lot quicker on gravel.
Johnny Milner was still protecting his lead in the Lombard Junior Challenge. He said he was taking it easy, but he was up to 12th place.
Despite making it all look rather easy, McRae was still posting fastest times with monotonous regularity. It must be difficult to motivate yourself.
In World Championship, you get hyped up a bit more. There's a lot more adrenaline flow. You approach, or I have been approaching the British Championship a lot more relaxed and not worrying about anything.
Well, from my point of view, obviously doing it as an amateur or as a privateer, we don't expect to come and beat Colin. If we beat him, we've been lucky, I think. So we try to be the best of the rest.
Well, I'm trying to motivate myself to keep in front of all these young whippersnappers. That's really what the plan is, and they're really going quite well today, and I'm just trying to go as fast as I can to make sure that I can hold my position and certainly hold the position in the championship.
As the second leg of the Manx International drew to a close, 68 cars of the original 100 were still running, including local drivers Nigel Cannell and Gary Leese, who had been charging hard all day and was rewarded with the 4th fastest time on the final stage of the day. You wouldn't think it here.
That was a good time, wasn't it? Excellent. I tried very, very hard on that. Very hard. I had a spin on the first hairpin as well. Thoroughly enjoyed it. This is more like it.
Back in the Group N department, Alistair McRae and David Senior were maintaining a 2-minute lead. Louise Aitken-Walker and Tina Torner were in second place and content to maintain their consistent pace. Unlike Formula One racing, where you try to get rid of your opponents if you can, rallying is a little more gentlemanly, when Mark Higgins turned the corner to find some damsels in distress with a broken gearbox, he gave Louise and Tina a helping shove to the end of the stage.
The foreign contingent, despite being conditioned to road rallying, were finding the peculiar ups and downs of the Isle of Man's road system quite difficult to cope with. Nothing daunted, Michael Kalfus, the driving instructor from Magdeburg, was holding a splendid 68th place.
By the end of the second day, Colin McRae held a 2.5-minute lead over the other two Subarus. A flying Metcalf was in 4th place. His Nova was the leading two-wheel drive car. He was leading his class and leading his young teammate Mark Higgins. Well, for most of the time at any rate.
Are you satisfied with that time, Mark?
Yeah, I think we just beat Dave on that one. That's the first time I've ever beaten him. It's a real Nova stage, cracker it is. Back into it now.
But on the last stage at the famous Sartfield hairpin, young Mark got carried away by his own enthusiasm. So all that remained at the end of day 2 was for someone else to pick up the pieces.
It usually rains on the Manx Rally, and those that had been expecting it were not disappointed on day 3. This obviously gave the four-wheel drive cars an advantage, and the Subarus of Colin McRae, Bertie Fisher and Kenny McKinstry consolidated their positions at the head of the field.
Although Fisher had a scare on the last morning with a turbo seizure, the 2 minutes he lost were not enough to rob him of second place. McKinstry was still setting third fastest times all over the place, and despite a broken rear suspension unit, he held third place, his best ever finish on the Manx.
Gerhard Mertz from Germany finished 26th overall, but that was enough to win his class. Frenchman Francis Leroy of the Citroën Ensemble took another class win in Group A. Denmark took Class N3 with the Peugeot 309, driven by Tim Svanholt and Henrik Vestergaard. Don Bailey and Geraldine McBride had never met before the rally, but finished 24th overall in the spotty Sierra.
David Higgins and Michael Pack in the Peugeot made it to the finish in 19th place, despite crashing off the road and driving down a river at one point. Johnny Milner demonstrated the camaraderie that exists in rallying by giving them a helping hand at a frantic service point.
50, crossroads, keep right, careful.
Trevor Smith and Roger Jones in the Sierra Cosworth retained their second place in the championship despite their almost obligatory turbo problems, which called for rapid cooling measures on the last day. Smith's problem helped Gary Leese and Pauline Taylor up to a fine 6th place overall, Gary achieving his ambition of being the best local driver on this event.
Poortown Ford presented no hazard for 4th placed Dave Metcalf. Alistair McRae was happily in 7th place and leading Group N in the Shell Scholarship Sierra.
But the Group N Championship leader, Louise Aitken-Walker, found herself with problems just 2 stages from the end. Yet another gearbox was fitted, together with a new clutch, but this gearbox seized, and Louise and Tina frustratingly retired 2 miles from the end of the very last stage.
Just we lost the drive, and unfortunately it just wouldn't go. But that's rallying, you know, so never mind, we'll live to fight another day.
Louise's demise from Group N now leaves the way open for Alistair to join his big brother Colin. There now looks a very good chance that he'll help to make another piece of history with a McRae family double in the championship.
Relieved it's all over now. It's been quite a long rally.
Hard one?
Well, hard in that we had to sort of drive at a very medium fast pace all the way through.
And of course, British champion again. What about that?
Yeah, well, hopefully next year we'll be concentrating more on World Championship rallies, so it's nice to leave the British Series with a title win.
Despite a disappointing 8th, Trevor Smith is still runner-up in the championship overall, but Alistair McRae's 7th position here means he could still overtake him on the final round, the Midlands Rally in October. In Group N, Alistair's win has given him a convincing lead over Louise Aitken-Walker, who now has only a slim chance of taking the championship. And in the Lombard Finance Junior section, Mark Higgins' win helps to narrow Johnny Milner's overall lead.
Congratulations again to Colin and Derek, but the undoubted stars of the Manx International Rally were the eventual winners of the Spirit of the Rally Award, the Trabant team.
Right 3 on bump, right 3. Cut left, cut right. Left 4 long to right 3. Cut left, right 4.5, and absolute left over crest, absolute right, 100 over bumps, post left 5, dip, absolute left 100, caution, bad dip, right 6 long, good, absolute crest 200, left 6, 250, watch this one. Downhill, right 5.5, over crest and jump. 50, absolute crest. 70, caution right 6, bad dip and forward. 50 sign, absolute right 50 grid, left 5 long, long. To sign 100, right 3. 50, absolute crest long, 100 cut left. For right 4 long, crest, left 5 long, 150 bump, absolute crest, 50 crest into left 4 long, long, could be wet. To the grid, right 2, very wet. Left 4.5, absolutely bloody soaking. 70, left 5, 400 to top.
100, flat crest. 200. Cut 4 left over crest, downhill. 50, 3 left. 50, sign 3 right. 50, long 6 left into forward. 1 right uphill, 50, crest into house 2 right. 50, white house 3 right, and crest 3 right, into 6 left. Crest into 90 left. 80. 2 right, and 2 right. Into wall 3 right. 50, 4 right. 50, bump 1 right, into care 90 left over bridge. And 90 left. 50.
Left 3. 50, right 5 over crest. 1 bite!
her next Midland Rally, the 6th and final round of the Mobil 1 Top Gear British Rally Championship, started from Weston Park near Telford. There was really only one big question at the Saturday evening start. Would Colin McRae win again and put his name in the record books, 6 in a row and a bonus mark? McRae had already taken the driver's title, but here in Tommy Mäkinen from Finland in the Works Nissan was someone who could really give him a run for his money.
Tommy Mäkinen, number 2, getting away.
Louise Aiken-Walker's demise on the previous round meant that Alistair McRae was odds-on favourite to win the Group N Championship, unless he did something silly. Added to this, just before the rally, Louise announced that this was to be her last event. Among the Lombard Junior challengers, Mark Higgins could also only watch and wait for Johnny Milner to slip up.
And there was the added bonus of Dave Metcalf being allowed out in Vauxhall's brand new toy, the 2-litre, two-wheel drive Astra, a World Rally debut.
The LNX Midland Rally is organised by the Wolverhampton and South Staffordshire Car Club, and so starts and finishes in the Midlands. But all of the forest action takes place in Wales. After 2 stages at Weston Park, the event restarts at Newtown for the meat of the rally, through some of the most famous forests in British rallying, Haffron, Dovey and Diffnan, before returning to Telford for the finish.
With most of the rally being run in the dark, Tommy Mäkinen's car, the Sunny, was somewhat inappropriately named. On the first run through Weston, it was misfiring badly, but on the second, it had been cured and he was 9 seconds quicker.
Flat left, flat right.
Colin McRae, however, had no such problems, with Derek Ringer reading the slightly unfamiliar pace notes provided by the organisers.
30, turn key right minus, through gate.
With the championship in the bag, Subaru had entered Colin on this rally as a tyre testing exercise, with the forthcoming Lombard RAC very much in mind. Nevertheless, McRae and Mäkinen were tying on time after their 2 runs at Weston Park. The scene looked set for a 2-horse race in the forests proper.
Easy left.
Leading the rest of the hunt was Trevor Smith with Roger Jones in their Group A Klaus Haller Sierra. Louise and her co-driver Tina Torner were obviously out to have the best possible fun on their last event.
What the hell? 70! Quick right over!
They didn't seem to be taking the pace notes too seriously either.
Double caution! Right entry, slippy. Yeah, this is over 50. Right entry, slippy, turn 90 right. Oh, look at this one! It's unbelievable! I'm just sure I'm not going to drive the last station. Long quick left and right, into square, left, post, into Ford.
The infamous Western water splash was plain sailing for Dave Metcalf's Astra. Richard Burns, however, seemed to be having problems with his Peugeot.
Absolutely lost it. I think we're all okay. That was the reason they had you out of the way because that car was...
It's surprising what some folk will do to get on television. Local man Paul Dias could win the Group N section, but only if Alistair McRae and Louise fell out of the event. A pretty tall order. Richard Hemingway and Graham Whittaker's Sierra seemed reluctant to follow the route too precisely. Steve Wedgbury has been a regular contender all year. His Skoda well on target for a championship class win.
After Weston Park there was service in Telford, then a few hours sleep in hotels, cars or whatever the budget allowed. Metcalf had a heart-stopping moment at Western when a brake pipe sheared, but still seemed able to see the funny side of it. Despite his earlier misdemeanours, Richard Burns was still smiling.
We were just trying some new brakes on the car because we're really here just to test and develop a few different things for next year. And they locked up as we came into the corner, and it was just a little bit more slippery than I thought. Went straight off and into the scenery.
You very nearly went into our cameraman.
Oh, they were very quick at getting out of the way.
They may as well make the most of the dry weather in England because Wales wouldn't be as kind.
It was a wet, wild night as the rally entered the 17-mile stage at Haffron Forest, the longest in the rally. And just to add to the problems, there were patches of fog, as Colin McRae quickly found out. Colin's description of the stage was not repeatable, especially when he found his time had been beaten by a massive 21 seconds. The man who delivered this nasty shock to McRae's system was Mackinnon. However, on the following stage, McRae took 18 of those seconds back. Despite the conditions and the unearthly hour of 2 o'clock in the morning, spectators galore filled the forests.
Quick left, 20, get right.
The dulcet tones of Ian Grinrod were guiding Dave Metcalf's new Astra into the night. Amazingly, they were up in third place overall.
Flat right, 20. Absolute left, 50.
Despite his allegedly steady pace, Alistair McRae hit problems with a gearbox stuck in fourth. He was, however, lucky. It happened right at the end of this forest stage, and service was close at hand. This must have dented his confidence somewhat.
Happy with myself, but the car's broken the gearbox in the last stage there. We haven't really dropped any time in the stage, but the boys are going to have to change the box now to keep us going.
And have you got plenty of time for that?
Well, we've got 20 minutes here and they can do the box in sort of 15, so it shouldn't be a problem.
What are you doing?
The gearbox seems to be the Achilles heel of the Group N Sierra, and all the leading contenders in this championship have suffered in this direction at one time or another. Alistair in the Shell Scholarship car is fortunate to have the backup of a big team of dedicated mechanics who seem able to perform miracles in any weather. Other teams are not so fortunate, but they all have to take it in their stride come hell or high water. But the weather is only part of their worries.
It's very wet and it gets a bit oily too.
Do you ever wonder why you do it?
A lot of the time, this time of night I do, yes.
Turn tight, hairpin left.
Johnny Milner, with his eyes on the prize of the Junior Championship, was going steadily and had Richard Burns in another Peugeot following him to lend assistance should the need arise, which was highly unlikely at this pedestrian pace in the pitch-black conditions. For Mark Higgins, it was a different story. He was driving for pride, not prizes. Nevertheless, he was up in 6th place in his scrabbling Nova. Unfortunately for him, Milner had made no mistakes.
Well, he's taking it so steady at the moment today. I think we nearly took 2 minutes off him on the first stage. He's just going for the finish, but sometimes your concentration level is down when you're driving like that. He's got to not finish and we've got to get the championship. And we need the championship.
Mark, 1953. Johnny, 2144. Richard Burns, 2049.
With Milner already set for the Shell Scholarship drive, Higgins' best hope of a drive on the RAC rally would be to win the £10,000.
Flat left 20, absolute right, turn tight hairpin left.
Back in the car of Louise Aitken-Walker and Tina Turner, the humour seemed to have evaporated a little, probably because it was 5 o'clock in the morning.
50, 90 right.
Conditions on the stages were obviously not to the ladies' liking.
Oh, it's really wet, miserable, pouring rain and mist. Can't see a thing.
So you're glad you're turning your back on the sport?
Well, when I look at these stages, yeah, I am. But Oh no, it's just really bad conditions, bad weather conditions. But that's rallying, I suppose. It's never changed in 14 years.
But at least it's not all work then.
No, we do get time to have a bit meal now and again.
And what about Louise? What's she like to work for?
Oh, very good. No, very good. She mixes in very well. No, she spends most of her time talking to the lads when she's out of the car. Very good, yeah.
And of course it's her last event this time.
It is, yeah. I'm sorry to see you go. I think everybody in the team's sorry to see you go, but I wish her all the best for the future.
Problems were affecting others further down the field, and Paul Dias was among those in trouble. He'd had a gearbox change. Meanwhile, in Metcalf's Astra, things were no better.
Right over crest, 30. Flat right, long. To crest, 20, turn easy right.
Broken drive shaft.
Yeah.
Turn.
Easy right.
Back at the Vauxhall camp, the mechanics were unaware of what was going on in the woods.
Oscar 1, cleared stage. We need the short drive shaft. We've broken the short drive shaft.
It was all hands on deck to see if Metcalf could be kept in business, but driving on to service for 4 miles after the drive shaft had broken didn't make their job any easier.
The rally was part of the Peugeot Challenge, and Brendan Creeley was happy to be keeping his lead in this section. Colin McRae's Subaru was showing signs that he was pushing hard to keep on terms with the fast Finn Mackinnon.
The last couple of stages have been a bit nicer to drive on. This morning was terrible. It was foggy, rainy, really slippy. Those typical RAC conditions.
Exactly. Is this going to be good practice for the RAC?
Yeah, it's good for me just to drive the car in these conditions, and for the tyres. We're doing quite a good tyre test today.
And of course these are the same sort of stages.
Yeah, so I mean it's perfect.
But you've got a bit of competition today though from Tommy Mackinnon.
Yeah, it makes a change. We've had it all our own way in the championship this year. It's nice to have someone that goes a bit quicker than you.
It's been very tight. I think we are 5 seconds front of him now, and I think it's very, very tight.
While the Nissan mechanics had things under control, the Vauxhall boys were fighting a losing battle because the flailing drive shaft had proved terminal.
A little bit disappointing, to be honest, but disappointing in one sense and encouraging in another. The car's worked well, and it's something really silly that's put us out in the end, but it's quite promising with the car.
The other part of the Vauxhall troop were busy changing a cam belt on Mark Higgins' Nova. Time was running out. There wasn't too much that Mark could do to assist the operation. Younger brother David was having some slight modifications made to his car.
The last stage, I came around and hit a log pile. On the same stage this morning, I spun it and lost 40 seconds. So now I've done a bit of damage. Looks like I'm doing the dishes for the next few weeks.
And at the Dolgethley service area, domestic chores were the order of the day, and it wasn't just jobs for the boys.
Hello, I needn't ask. I needn't ask what your job is on this team.
No, I'm washing today, unfortunately.
Or do you do other things as well on the team?
No, I've just come out for the day today. Well, for the night really. So that's all I've been doing, just washing the car today.
Then there was Meals on Wheels.
Hello, and another part of the service crew's work, eh?
Yes. Yeah. Got the cooking.
So this is your only job, is it?
Not quite. Clean the car off as well.
It looks to me as though you could do with a mechanic's attention on your kettle.
That was me. I drove over it.
The final forest stage of the LNX Midland was the classic 10-miler in Diffnant Forest. While business is slack, the crews can get out of the ever-present rain, but for the amazingly hardy spectators, there was no such luck. In Finland, these conditions are meat and drink to rally drivers, and Tommy Mäkinen professed to be really enjoying them. He and co-driver Seppo Harrian were 5 seconds ahead of McRae at the beginning of the stage, but his over-exuberance was costing him time. Colin McRae had by now decided his tyre testing was over, and he and Derek Ringer were going for gold. Colin has never won this rally, and he was determined to get his name on the trophy. It had been 12 years since it had been in the McRae household, and then it belonged to Father Jimmy, who won this event in a Vauxhall Chevette. But Mäkinen wasn't prepared to let the trophy go without a fight. As the cars headed out of Wales, the winner of this rally was far from certain.
Depends what Tommy's time is here. I mean, if he's quicker in there, then I don't think so.
As it turned out, he wasn't, and Colin was now only 3 seconds adrift because of Mäkinen's antics.
It was very nice. Very nice. I spun, and then I had to reverse twice, and I lost the time.
Trevor Smith, who'd had his share of problems during the year, was having a great run this time, and he and Alistair McRae were battling it out for third place. Alistair, in his Group N car, had left his gearbox problems behind, but there was no way he could match the speed of Smith and Jones in their Group A version. With forest racers like Alistair, sitting in the passenger seat must be fairly onerous.
Oh, it's okay. It's really easy to get on with. You know, we have a fairly good time in the car. Trust him all the time what you've got to do. No, it's really good. Very talented.
Louise Aitken-Walker was now rapidly reaching the end of her remarkable rallying career. She had learned to drive on her family's farm at the age of 9 before winning a Find a Lady rally driver competition 10 years later. She was the first woman to win a British national rally, became European, then Ladies Champion of the World, and this year was awarded the MBE. Her retirement must have dominated the conversation in the car.
For sure, we've been talking about this all day, and all the chats and all the jokes and all the singing and the stories. We for sure have to take up historical rallies in the future.
Someone at the very beginning of his career, young Mark Higgins, with usual partner Cliff Simmons, was up in a fine 5th place, but resigned to losing the junior challenge to Johnny Milner, who finished every rally in the championship this year.
Quick right over crest. 70.
Consistency had really paid off for Johnny and co-driver Chris Wood, who've adapted very well to the varying conditions on each round and even each stage.
Different to all the other ones, that it's all very it's like fresh grass and fresh mud and everything, and it's probably one of the most slippiest and most taxing, I would say. I'd say if we can get to the end of these last 2 stages, get through Western Park, we've cracked it.
And he still had Richard Burns there, just in case he needed a helping hand. Midlands-based Paul Dias was trying hard to finish the event for the first time in 3 years. For Mad Mick Jones and his pottering Mitsubishi Galant, there was only one item on the agenda: finishing in one piece. As ever, Mick saw the funny side of it.
Flat out, man. Yeah, I was going to be third fastest through here, come hell or high water, and tyres come off the rim.
Getting under Richard Forster's feet was another vehicle looking rather second-hand, the Peugeot 205 of Nick Elliott.
Hello. What's been happening here?
We've had a little bit of a problem. Fortunately, we rolled it on that stage. We hit a big rock on the inside of the corner, it just flipped it straight over. We landed on the wheel, spun it back round, and they chucked the towing cars back through the windows. We drove out. We lost about a minute in total.
A new tyre firmly in place, Mick Jones and Neil Dashfield were soon on their way again. Lower down the field, Ian Scott in his Group N Nova was lying 34th, but still second in his class. He was just one of the many privateers who are the backbone of rallying the world over. 19-year-old David Higgins, despite his restyling of his father's VW Golf, was 21st and leading his class.
The prospect of an exciting climax brought the crowds out in force to watch Mackinnon and McRae fight it out to the end over the 2-mile stage, which was run twice. Over the first run, McRae was 2 seconds quicker than Mackinnon, so as they went in for their second run, the Finn led by just 1 second. Johnny Milner in the Peugeot was still running 7th overall and holding on to his junior challenge lead, much to the annoyance of Mark Higgins, who knew that his one mistake in Ulster had cost him dearly. As Johnny Milner and Chris Wood approached the finish line, the sheer delight on board was obvious.
Louise Aitken-Walker yet again demonstrated her consistency to finish 6th. Her one misfortune on the Isle of Man lost her the Group N Championship to Alistair McRae, whose speed throughout the season had been most impressive. He went on to finish 4th overall here on this event. Trevor Smith has been one of the most popular drivers in the series, and his 3rd place on this rally was an excellent result for the 44-year-old engineer from Burford in Oxfordshire.
I thoroughly enjoyed the championship. The first time in the championship to finish 2nd overall, it really couldn't be better for me.
Brendan Creeley won the Peugeot Challenge and a works drive on the Lombard RAC, and Mike Williams won Vauxhall's season-long challenge by just half a point. Stephen Green in his hired Nova managed a superb 9th place overall. And Steve Wedgbury on his home event easily secured yet another class win. Manx driver Scott Bradshaw took class N3.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll let you know, all the bodywork's a bit bent on
his first run through the park in his battered Peugeot, Nick Elliott gave the car more of a pounding and a puncture, while Tommy Mackinnon on his second run was breathing down his neck and had to overtake the Peugeot. Mackinnon certainly felt this delay robbed him of a win.
At this stage in the proceedings, McRae was determined not to make any mistakes. So Colin McRae and Derek Ringer just managed to sneak into 1st place on this final event by 2 seconds from a disappointed Mackinnon. But the gap between the top 2 and the rest was nearly 8 minutes. 5th place for Mark Higgins was his best result to date, and a good 8th for Mick Jones in the Gallant, despite that involuntary tyre change.
The British Rally Championship overall has been a McRae benefit. Colin won the top title by taking maximum scores, while Alistair managed 3rd. Early scorers Paul Dias and Kenny McKinstry completed the top 8. Alistair was also Group N champion, convincingly ahead of Louise Aitken-Walker. In the Lombard Junior section, despite a win by Higgins on this event, Johnny Milner's consistency paid off as he scored on every round of the championship to head home Vauxhall drivers Mark Higgins and Richard Forster and take the £10,000.
1992, an astonishing year for Colin McRae, Derek Ringer and Subaru. Fastest in 92 of the 112 stages of the British Championship. It must bode well for their world hopes next year.
longs, easy left. 30. Quick left. 20. K right. Turn medium left. 30. Flat right. 20. Absolute left. 50. Flat right over crest. 30. Turn tight, hairpin left. 50. Flat left 20. Flat right 50. Easy right. Into flat right over 100. Tightens, turn hairpin right. 20. Quick left, long through logs, over 200. Crest, absolute right.
Right up, 100. Late slide right. Long, medium right tightens. Right opens over crest, 30, easy left tightens, 90 left.